Freedom, man. That's what it's all about. You've got to groove on freedom, like the good book says.
Welcome. You are listening to What on Earth is Happening. This show will discuss the topics of human consciousness, mind control, natural law, the occult, and all issues that affect the freedom of the people of Earth. What on Earth is Happening will endeavor to shine light upon the darkness of our world and to offer empowering solutions to the problems we face as humanity approaches its critical moment of choice. And now, here is your host, Mark Passio.
Welcome one and all, you're watching What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. Ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. And here on What on Earth is Happening, we are ending slavery one mind at a time. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Today is Sunday, July 5th, 2020. We have a great show lined up for you here today. This is episode number 229 of What on Earth is Happening. This episode is entitled The Psychological State of Police and Their Supporters, Part 3, Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop. Let's switch over to the slides for today. I have a couple of quick event announcements before we jump into the material for today. I want to thank Brett Hatton, Becca Godwin, and Mark Messina for artwork provided for this episode. This is the episode art for today's show. We are still accepting donations to complete the documentary entitled Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law, my premier documentary effort. There's 5 donation tiers on gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. That's called our donation gifts area of the website. 100% of all donations go directly to production costs for the documentary. All donors receive a free complimentary copy of the completed documentary on flash drive and DVD. Thank you to everyone who has donated so far. You have really advanced this project forward. It's looking great. We are certainly slated to complete this before the end of the year. There are some new items coming for donation gifts, namely new t-shirts. We're going to have the Science of Natural Law t-shirt released soon. I just released the Worldview Violence and the Real Pandemics presentation up there on flash drive and DVD. Of course, we have the complete Passio One Great Work collection on a SanDisk 500 gigabyte solid state drive. It's a very popular item. Check all that out at gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. I want to talk a little bit about the How to Become the True Media seminar. This is a 23-week technology seminar hosted by Zoom by me. And I want to thank everyone who has enrolled because the response has been tremendous. Now, a few quick notes about this seminar for those who are taking it and who may have wanted to take it. The seminar available slots, available enrollments were all filled entirely on June 29th. That was about 5 days before we had planned on finishing enrollment. The response was greater than I thought, and a lot of people who wanted to take the seminar were unfortunately missed the boat and didn't get a chance to enroll because I had to cut enrollments off at a certain point. I want to say something about this, and I don't want to beat up those who didn't make it into the class. I just want to let people know that this is part of what this class was about. Everybody, a lot of people ask me, can you please reopen enrollments? And my answer was no. Politely, I'm not going to do that. Okay, now that could mean I bring in more money for the cause, but that's not even what this was about. Okay, this is about finding the people who will show the initiative to go after something like this and really seize the opportunity. So for those who did not make the enrollment because we, basically filled up the class on June 29th, I just want to say that I told everyone this was probably going to fill up, so you cannot place this upon me. I told everyone in advance multiple times this was probably going to fill up before July 4th when we were going to cut it off. Many people have emailed us and asked us if they would take a late enrollment, and we are not doing that. This is sort of to, really kind of, raise the bar and say, hey, this is how you have to be. You cannot let opportunities go because they may not be there the next day. So, for those who missed the enrollment, you can enroll next year when I do this. I'm thinking about doing this as a 6-month on, 6-month off thing, where I give the seminar every 6 months and then we take a break for 6 months and then I open enrollment again approximately 6 months later. That looks like how I'm going to be doing this for at least the next year or two minimum. Okay? So you will have an opportunity to enroll next year in the 2021 class if we're all still here. That being said, for those who did make the enrollment cutoff, classes will begin this Tuesday, July 7th. The Zoom meeting will begin exactly at 7:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. This gives you 1/2 hour, 30 full minutes to get into the waiting room. I am going to be admitting people from the waiting room of the Zoom area into the seminar. I'm highly recommending that people do not wait until 8 p.m. to come into this class. I want to say for all enrollees to this seminar, do not wait. Come in at 7:30 if you can. Get yourself together and mentally prepared, okay? Don't wait until 8 o'clock. I want to explain something, and I'm going to take a couple minutes to go into this a little bit, okay? Because I find it very important. This is like showing up to a live event when the speaker has already begun speaking late. It's extremely rude to do that, okay? I really don't want anybody coming in after 8 p.m. I'm giving you a half an hour berth to come into the class on time. Consider that it starts at 7:30. Let's just look at it that way, okay? The meeting starts at 7:30. Come in early, get a drink ready, get your notepad ready, get a pen so you could take notes. Okay, we're going to get to that. But just show up early so I could admit you in from the waiting room into the seminar. Don't show up after 8 p.m. It's rude, okay? It's a distraction because there's no producer on duty for this, folks. I want everybody to know this, okay? No producer will be on duty for this seminar. It's just me sharing my computer screen with you and doing live tutoring. That's what the seminar will be. Me showing you software, okay? And eventually we'll show some hardware things through my camera. But showing up after 8 o'clock, you're forcing me to take a break from what I'm doing and admit you into the class from the waiting room. It would be like the equivalent of showing up at someone's home who's doing a private seminar in their home and ringing the doorbell after the seminar has started. Consider that extremely rude. So I'm asking enrollees respectfully not to do that, please. Okay? So just show up a little bit before the seminar starts. Okay? The class instruction will begin promptly at exactly 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern U.S. time. If you're from another country other than the United States, or if you're from another time zone, please make sure you calculate that correctly. U.S. Eastern Time, we are in Daylight Savings Time, so it's EDT, Eastern Daylight Time, okay? Calculate that correctly so you can be prompt for the class. Please be on time, or you might miss important information that will not be repeated. If you come in late and you miss announcements that I make at the beginning, I will not repeat myself. This is going to be the same way all 23 classes. So show up on time for all 23 classes. Do not expect me to repeat announcements that I will give at the beginning of each class later on. That will not be done. So if you miss it, you miss it, and that's on you, and that will detract from your value of the personal resources that you spent on this seminar, and I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to gain maximum value. I know how hard-earned your resources are, and I want you to gain maximum value from what you put into this seminar, okay? Please keep a notepad handy for notes and questions. I mean, you could do that digitally, or you can write it down with pen and paper. There will be a function where you can digitally, quote-unquote, raise your hand in the seminar class, and you will be able to ask questions. I will take the question as I see hands go up, and I will put your microphone live, and you can ask questions. For those who are going to interact and ask questions, I'm not going to put your camera live on the seminar. It will be voice only. I will turn your voice on. This is why I highly recommend headphones. Headphones are highly recommended for this seminar, because if you don't use headphones, your mic that is going to be picking up your voice, you will get feedback through that microphone through your computer speakers. It will loop back and echo or feedback, and then that will feed back in everybody else's ears. So that is also rude. If you intend on asking questions, through your digital audio, okay, please use headphones. It's a respectful thing to do for all other attendees and myself. If you have any problems at all, okay, most people are completely registered and ready to go. If you enrolled and you have any problems registering for the classes, getting in to the class through the access link, okay, please email us now. Do not wait for the last minute, okay? Email us immediately. We will guide you through the process of getting the software on your computer if we have to. We will personally guide you through it, okay? So please, email truemedia@whatonearthishappening.com if you have any problems whatsoever. All right? I think that covers everything I want to cover regarding the How to Become the True Media seminar. I want to thank all enrollees. I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be awesome. I think people are going to learn so much, okay? People are going to be blown away by how much they learn, I think, okay? And I want to thank everyone who enrolled. It's really going to help us out here at What on Earth is Happening. I think it's going to be a win-win situation for everyone. I want to say something about the new 3D logo, which everyone obviously has already seen. This is incredible. I'm so happy about it, okay? I want to thank Justin Shepard for making this for us. I mean, what a phenomenal job. I mean, this man is ultra talented, okay? So thank you to Justin, another artist and developer we are working with. Phenomenal job. Thank you for your efforts, Justin. Okay? So that being said, let's jump into the material for today's episode. Before I jump into Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop, I want to go through a couple of quick slides. First of all, I want to say that I feel that the 4th of July, which some people just quote-unquote celebrated, should actually be turned into a national day of mourning. And if you're offended by that statement, get as offended as you like. Okay? Because if you think July 4th is anything for modern Americans to celebrate, quote unquote, you are delusional. You are a naive, delusional, brainwashed child if you think July 4th is cause for celebration. July 4th in the modern day should be a day of mourning and sad contemplation for the ultimate sacrifices that human beings made to attempt to procure for future generations, for themselves and for future generations, a small modicum of human freedom. And that ultimate sacrifice was completely and utterly squandered by human beings ever since. This is the state of freedom and liberty in the United States and actually throughout the world. It weeps for humanity. July 4th should be a day of national mourning, not celebration, to anyone who considers themselves awakened and paying any attention to the events that are truly taking place in our world, and especially here in America. I made this slide a couple years back, and I think, it uses this old saying that has been out there quite a bit. I refined it a little bit and just dressed it up aesthetically. Our forefathers did not politely protest the British. They did not vote them out of office, impeach the king, march on the Capitol, or ask permission for their rights. They fucking shot them. That is what our forefathers here in America did. Now, you can go on and on and on about how, yes, they procured that modicum of freedom for only a percentage of people and didn't do that for everyone. Fully agreed. They weren't at the level of consciousness to understand that freedom cannot be held back from anyone. That being said, they did procure it sufficiently such that at least the people who came after them could go past them in consciousness and even have this conversation. And even put a slide like that up on thousands of people's screens throughout the world. Okay? So, freedom is a stepping stone process. Should it be understood all at once? Yeah, it should by anyone with common sense. This slide should be understood by anyone with common sense. But unfortunately, people are so brainwashed, so indoctrinated, that sometimes we have to take it there in a stepwise progression. And that's what I've intended to do here on What on Earth is Happening. And regarding that, I say every week, What on Earth is Happening is a stepwise progression. It is cumulative information. If you're a new viewer, you shouldn't start here, folks. Okay, this is the end of the road. You should start at number 1 and work your way forward. Go to the podcast tab, whatonearthishappening.com/podcasts. Work your way from number 1. Go to in order. Okay, and work your way from number 1 through to 229. Okay, this is built upon all 228 previous episodes. All right, work your way through the material in order at your own pace, and then you'll understand fully. I see tons and tons of people who to this day have not done that, and you do not understand fully because you haven't done that process, because you're lazy, quite frankly. You're a half-wayer, and you're a person who executes half measures, and that will not get it done in consciousness. That's why your consciousness hasn't progressed to where it has to progress to, and you've taken lazy half measures. If you haven't listened and watched every What on Earth is Happening episode in its entirety in order. Okay? Get as offended about that as you like. I couldn't care less. I'm explaining to you how to gain maximum value from this podcast series. If you don't want to do that, it's on you and you won't understand. Fully, at least. You will understand half-assed. Which, really, you might as well not bother, quite frankly. So let's go back to the slides. This is the modern-day jackass living in America. Brainwashed, indoctrinated imbecile who thinks they're somehow aware and helping. They're like Ralph from The Simpsons, eating his boogers that he picked out of his nose, saying, "I'm helping." How can you tell if someone is an indoctrinated idiot in the year 2020? They'll be wearing a germ-infested face diaper while believing that they're heroes who are saving people's lives. This is what we have. Indoctrinated jackasses who actually believe they know something of science, and they think it's settled science, and they think wearing a mask is going to help them or anyone else. And it's a crock of bullshit, and it's a big Psy-Op. Now, probably 2 weeks from now, I'm going to begin a whole new series on the What on Earth is Happening podcast series called Psy-Ops. It's a series of presentations that I've been wanting to do for a while, okay? And we're going to cover the coronavirus Psy-Op in detail. We're going to cover many other Psy-Ops in detail, including Flat Earth, including Q, including the cultural Marxist Psy-Op of painting the founders of America as all bad people, okay? We're going to be getting into all these types of Psy-Ops and more, all right? So we'll be doing that in future episodes. But people who think that it is settled science of how, quote, viruses work, this is part of the problem, ladies and gentlemen. It isn't settled science. It's highly contested. There are multiple theories of contagion, vectors for contagion, and the nature of what we are calling viruses. And that is not settled science. It is highly debated. And as a matter of fact, there are theories that make far greater common sense than what we have been told by the mass media and by current quote-unquote science, which is not settled, as many people insist and claim it to be. And as you will see, we will talk a lot about exosome theory versus virus theory, and you will see how the very idea of an exosome is actually the building 7 of the COVID-19 Psy-Op. Okay? I'll say that again. Exosomes are the building 7 of the COVID-19 Psy-Op. And you will understand what I mean by that when we cover this material in a couple weeks on What on Earth is Happening. That being said, let's continue with the slides for this week. Let's jump back in. I brought this slide up last week, and I think it's so good, I just want to reiterate it this week. This slide encapsulates the entire state of our reality in one slide. There is a satanic death cult that is actually running the world and is coming to devour people. It doesn't make a difference what walk of life you're from. It doesn't make a difference what color your skin is, what your cultural background or religion is, what your class is, how old you are, okay? None of that matters. All that matters is whether you're awake to it and you understand that this is a dark, occult, satanic death cult. That's what all politics is. That's what the mainstream media is. And most of all, connected with this current series that we're going through here in What on Earth is Happening, that is what the police are a part of. All police worldwide are low-level members, whether they know it or not. You don't have to know it consciously, but they are all low-level members of the satanic death cult that ultimately runs the world and is currently culling the world. We are in the middle of a satanic dysgenics culling. See, I don't even call it eugenics anymore. Okay? We shouldn't even refer to what's happening as eugenics. Eugenics from the Greek roots mean good genes or good breeding or good carrying down of genes to future generations. That isn't what's happening to humanity. We are undergoing a process of Epi-Disgenics, meaning that the dysgenics or bad carrying down of genetic material to future generations that is happening is actually being done through mind control. That's called Epi-Disgenics, going beyond classical methods of dysgenics through forced sterilization, through forced physical population reduction. No, they don't need to do it that way anymore, folks. They let the herd cull itself dysgenically. Okay? That's what Epi-Disgenics means. We have to coin the term, okay? I called it epi-eugenics in my Unholy Feminine presentation. But if the truth is told, this satanic cult is exercising what I am now calling Epi-Disgenics. We need to popularize the term, okay? And there's a tiny few people who are exposing this satanic Epi-Disgenics death cult that is actively culling humanity. Tiny, tiny few people doing that work in any way that is actually very good, that they're actually doing that work in a really effective way. A tiny, tiny piss-in-a-pot handful of people worldwide, scattered to the four winds of the earth. Okay? And that's what that, dog represents. And then the rest of the world are lazy, ignorant, apathetic, cowardly sheep that are just couldn't care less about a damn thing except what's going on in their pathetic, miserable, selfish lives. That's all that they care about, because they're actually lower level members of that satanic death cult, if the truth be told. They're practicing what I call mini-me Satanism, meaning they've been inculcated and indoctrinated into an even lower level variant of the religion that the big satanic death cult that is running the world operates according to. That's really what the rest of the world is. It's just a lower level, minion level status, way, way, way down on the hierarchy, on the totem pole, than the higher level satanic death cult. They have to give other people their mindset. And folks, I see it every single day on forums and social media. I just monitor it. I don't get too involved in the drama. I just look at it just to be an observer of where human thought, where human consciousness is at. And it's tragically pathetic. Tragically pathetic. My viewership, you're not doing your job. I'm sorry. I don't care how offended you get. You're failing miserably at your job. And guess what? You don't like me saying that? Turn the fucking show off. I couldn't care less. I'm speaking the truth. I don't care who it offends. I don't care if you're offended. I'm going to tell you when you're doing a good job. I'm going to tell you when you're failing pathetically. Regarding reaching the masses of people, your pathetic failures at what I've been explaining you must be doing for over a decade now. It's a pathetic failure, the outreach that should be occurring as a result of what has been taught here on What on Earth is Happening. And you, my friends, that are watching out there are failing at it. And I'll keep reiterating that right to your face. I don't care about losing viewership. I could care less. I'm here to speak 100% hardcore truth, no matter who it offends. And I'm going to do that week in and week out. And I'm one of the only people that'll do that. So I don't give a shit about ratings. I don't care about money. All I care about is what's true, and all I care about is whether we're affecting the world for the better. And I'm telling you, you're not doing your job. You think you are, and you're failing miserably at it. Because you're not involved enough. And that's part of what the seminar is about, the How to Become the True Media seminar. Because people don't know how to do this outreach. That's part of it. Even those who do, many of them stay silent because they're cowardly. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to draw attention to themselves. A lot of people out there saying that they're doing it. You're cowards in so many other ways in not using your real name. You're telling everybody that I'm afraid. It's pathetic. It's pathetic and cowardly not to use your real name. I don't care what you think about a real legal name. I could care less. I could care less about that somebody named me at birth, Mark Passio. That is my actual legal name I was given at birth. Who gives a shit that it's legal? I couldn't care less. I don't acknowledge the state. But that is my birth name. Okay? And I put it out there for people. I don't care who's watching, listening. Anybody listening, all you could do is learn something from me. As long as you're not a hard-headed, totally rooted in the ego Satanist, which most people are in their minds. Okay? But I'm telling my hardcore viewership out there, you failed at doing your job to a large extent. Some people have done a great job. And some people have done such a great job, I'm going to be asking them to come on the One Great Work Network, which we are building out. It's actively going to be being developed. We have found developers to do this project. And it's going to happen. So get ready for it. The One Great Work Network is coming. I don't have any dates. I'm not going to project on that. It'll come when it's fully ready. But guess what? We have the people to put it in place now, finally. And I'm going to be, by personal invite, offering people who I do think have done a good job. Don't take what I've just said as a blanket statement, folks. Some people have done a great job. But, you know, it's a tiny, tiny few comparatively by ratio of the total people who say that they know what's going on and say they're awake compared to the people who are actively doing very good work. It's a tiny handful of people, less than a handful. Okay? So I just wanted to reiterate that slide and talk about that dynamic a little bit. Last week we ended the show on these couple slides. I'm just going to briefly review. Do most people think, see, when we're talking about police, their supporters, policing in general, I continue to hear it on social media, the staggering ignorance and lack of true being awake. So many people, I'm going to do a whole thing. We're going to have a whole series on what on earth is happening called The False Awakening. The False Awakening and its characteristics. How about that as a future what on earth is happening topic? The False Awakening and its characteristics. That will be a phenomenal show or series of shows here on What on Earth is Happening. Because I hear people who claim that they are awake day in and day out, just, you know, listening out. I just observe and see where consciousness is at. And I'm telling you, it's in the toilet bowl. It's in the toilet bowl. Human consciousness. And our viewership, who claims that they're awake, you're not actively, truly engaged in wisdom. You have knowledge and understanding, many of you, but you're not engaged in wisdom. Wisdom is doing the right thing with what you have come to know and understand. And how few of you that are doing that, once again, it's a paltry effort. Paltry effort. Look up the word if you don't understand it. Paltry, paltry. It means it's so few as to be negligible. It's embarrassingly few. That's what it generally means. Okay? So, when I hear people who claim to be awakened saying, not all cops are bad. Hold on, step out of the slides because he's coming out. Vomit Man is coming out. Haven't brought him out in several weeks here, but he's coming out today. Let's switch over to all the people who insist that there is such a thing as a good cop. Yeah, I'm completely awake. I'm a totally awake human being. I know what's going on in the world. And you know what? All the people that say that all cops are bad, no, you're wrong. Some cops are good people. Yeah, I'm awake and I want to dispel this myth that all cops are bad people. No, some cops are good people. That's what you sound like, jackass. That's what you sound like, jackass. And I will not apologize for what I just did. You're not awake and you don't know what you're talking about. Hold off on going back to the slides. Hold on. Let me get it set back up. Okay, you can switch back. I'm not going to apologize to anybody because I'm right. Because I'm right. And you're incorrect. And I'll say it right to your face in person. Come see me when you see me in person. And I'll say it to your face. There's no such thing as a good cop and never has been, never will be. I've gone through it endlessly here on What on Earth is Happening. If you do not understand, I do not need to reiterate all of that philosophy on every episode. No, I do not. You are the one who is deficient and negligent. You are the one, if you want to understand it, need to go back in my former effort that I have archived on my website, whatonearthishappening.com/podcast, and listen to them in order, and then you will get the necessary prerequisite philosophy and understand why there cannot be such a thing as a good cop, ever, and never has been. You're lazy, and you haven't done that work. And I don't need to reiterate it and take up the time to reiterate it on every podcast. You go back and listen to it. I've already done the work and I've already explained it in detail ad nauseum. That means to the point of nausea, to the point where it will make you nauseous how much I've reiterated those philosophical first principles in morality, in objective morality. So if you don't yet understand it, it's not a matter of opinion, it's objective fact, and you're wrong. And you need to clear up your erroneous belief system. You need to clear it up and get right with the facts, with the objective, provable facts in nature. Because you're part of the problem if you still think that. So we left off last week's show talking about classical gangs that just want to take territory and tell people that they own them and that they're going to tell them what they can and can't do in whatever territory they rule. This is no different than the concept of jurisdiction put in place by politicians and police. But do most people think that classical gangs like this, violent gangs, have the right to rule them? No, they do not. That's why it would always be better for a situation where chaos broke out and gangs like this started claiming that they can rule people. That would be better than what we have today. Let me state that in unequivocal terms. It would be better to have a scenario where gangs like this, like what you see in this slide, claimed that they have the right to rule people. Because would people accept and believe that notion of an armed criminal thug gang who just wants to do violence to other people? Would they actually just fully mindedly give their belief over to these people and say, oh yeah, we believe that you have the right to rule us? No, they wouldn't do that. We're in a far more dangerous situation, boys and girls. Far more dangerous, far more even chaotic situation than that. Because we are in a situation where jackasses all throughout the world who are members of a cult belief system, a satanic cult belief system, actually have come to believe through a total process of brainwashing and indoctrination that's been fed to them since the moment that they were shat out of their mother's womb. Okay? Actually believe that this criminal gang has the right to rule them because of a concept called authority. Because of a religious belief called authority. If you have not come to the unequivocal, objectively true conclusion that all authority is a religious cult belief system, then you are not awake. And if you think this gang has the right to rule you, or even to exist, you're not awake at all. Not even a little bit, child. You want to be spoken to with respect? Exercise self-respect and stop believing in nonsense. Stop believing in religious cult nonsense. What people who believe that police even have a right to exist actually believe in is satanic cult religious belief nonsense. Get as offended as you like. It'll never make the statement untrue. Back to the slides. What this condition actually is, no matter how you want to euphemize it, it's called slavery. It always has been slavery. It is slavery now, and we're enslaved right now. It is slavery until this entire concept of policing, of authority, of government is completely destroyed and abolished from the world. It always will be slavery. And if you don't understand that, you are unconscious. You are not a conscious, awakened being. Let's get that straight. Let's get it straight. That's one of the top characteristics of what it actually means to be truly an awakened being. I covered all of the characteristics of what it actually really, in objective reality, means to be awake, to be an awakened being, in the seminar that I put out publicly entitled Streetwise Spirituality. Go back in my archives on the video section of whatonearthishappening.com, whatonearthishappening.com/video. Videos, I believe, or just click the videos tab. Okay? whatonearthishappening.com/videos and watch Streetwise Spirituality. That's the seminar you want to get clear about what it means to be awakened. And most people out there, you're not awakened even a little bit. Even some listeners to my show. Some of you are truly awakened. Some of you are not just awakened, but you have wisdom because you're doing the right thing with that status of awakening. And that's what it really means to truly be awake. You have to be taking action. But I'll tell you what, most of you are halfway there at best. And, a lot of you aren't taking action. And that really, truly means you're not all the way there. You're not all the way awake. To really push it forward into the realm of true awakening, you have to take right action. So, back to the slides. This is what I concluded last week on. Government and policing are themselves merely euphemisms for slavery. One of the so-called founding fathers of America, James Madison, he put out some flawed moral and philosophical logic. Okay? He said, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. This is the justification for what is known as minarchism, or limited government. In other words, this person believed in such a thing as limited slavery. I credit Madison for taking things so far up to a point, but then you have to say what it truly is. Minarchism is minimal slavery. Is there such a thing as minimal slavery? Can you be minimally enslaved? He didn't understand and wasn't fully philosophically, morally, and spiritually awakened. He was a halfway being. He was halfway there. I, on the other hand, am all the way there. I'm going to do in the presentation series entitled "The False Awakening." Okay, one of my first title cards, one of my first pieces of art, I'm going to display a quote, and it's going to be the concept in Eastern thought in Buddhism. If you meet the Buddha on the road to enlightenment, kill him. Let me say that again. If you meet the Buddha on the road to enlightenment, kill him. That means if you're going to encounter on the path to true enlightenment false awakenings that are considered false Buddhas. The Buddha was considered the awakened one in Eastern Buddhist philosophy. So this statement in Buddhism means if you're on the path to awakening, but you're not there yet, and there is such a thing as getting there, as being there. Yes, there is such a thing as a destination. The destination is the 20 points that I cover in Streetwise Spirituality. That's what it really means to be awake. It's not my opinion. It's not subjective. If you don't have those 20 things, you're not awake. If you don't have those 20 characteristics, you're not awake. So that's the destination. You can go even past that. Okay? There are other destinations, but that's the destination of what it actually means objectively to be awake. But if along that way, you're getting there, and then suddenly somebody goes, oh no, this is the end of the path. Set up tent here, you don't need to go any further. This is where the people who believe that policing is morally legitimate are. This is where people are like James Madison, who was a minarchist and didn't go all the way to true anarchy, to true understanding that there can never be moral legitimacy in the rulership of other people. That is just a claim of ownership on other people, which is slavery. That's what all government is. Claiming that some people have rights that others do not. Claiming we can delegate rights that the individual does not to other individuals. Claiming that authority is real and legitimate. All of these things are false religious beliefs. And those who don't strike them down have encountered a false Buddha on the path and haven't killed him. Okay? That's what that means. That's what I'm going to start that lecture series, that presentation series with that concept. If you meet the Buddha on the path to enlightenment, kill him. Okay? Now, I countered James Madison's minarchy, flawed moral and philosophical, quote, logic with true, awakened, and sound moral and philosophical logic for anyone with common sense and a true understanding of objective morality. My retort to Madison in the modern day, in my words, is this. Since human beings aren't angels, and we certainly agree on that point, none are fit to rule. All authority is illegitimate for human beings. No one is an angel. No one is angelic. We are all flawed human beings. No matter how awakened we are, we still have flaws, because awakening does not equate to perfection. That is number 20 out of 20. Okay, there's your 2020 in 2020. The 20th point of streetwise spirituality, of characteristics of what it means to be truly awakened is, do not equate being awakened with being perfect. Being an awakened one does not mean you are a perfect one. And if you claim to be perfect, that's the height of egotism and the height of hubris. No one is perfect. No one ever has been perfect. No one ever will achieve perfection in 3D human form. That is for the creator of the universe itself. That's what that is. That's what that force or consciousness is. It is not human beings. You claim that, you're claiming godhood. You're claiming to be God. You're claiming to be the creator of the universe that set all the laws of the universe into motion. You are not that. You are within that. You are a part of that, but you are not that in its entirety. Okay? Right now, we are all flawed individual human beings having a human experience. We are spiritual beings. We are components of the spiritual having a human experience in the 3D. To claim perfection in that is the height of hubris. There is no such thing as perfection in the 3D or physical domain. So, human beings most certainly aren't angels, and they're not perfect. Therefore, none are fit to rule. None are fit for the position of authority or kingship or rulership. It's inherently immoral and inherently morally illegitimate. And if you don't understand that, it's not a subjective opinion to say I agree or I don't agree. If you don't understand that eternal truth, you are simply wrong, and your ego is in the way of understanding it, as I've said very pointedly last week and in previous weeks. It is your ego that is in the way of the proper reception of that first principle of morality in natural law. It is not because I haven't explained it sufficiently. It is because you haven't received it properly. Let's get that straight where the ego is at. The problem in ego is not with me. I have understood it, changed my thought process accordingly, changed my actions accordingly, taught it perfectly. That's where I can claim I've done something perfect. I don't claim to be perfect, but have I taught that perfectly? I've taught it as close to perfection as it can be done in human form, to the point where I've covered every philosophical aspect of it practically hundreds of times. So the fault or flaw does not lie with me as a teacher of objective moral philosophy when it comes to the concept of authority and how it is inherently morally illegitimate. All authority in government is. The problem lies with others. Their ego is too huge and too calcified into diamond. Calcified to the hardness of diamond. That it is in the way of proper reception of natural law first principles. Therefore, they are clinging on to immoral ideas, and as such, they continue to express and act upon immoral ideas, and that is what makes them themselves a bad person. Yes, clinging on to those immoral ideas that government should exist, has the moral right to exist, and that other people must be coerced to live under it, is itself immoral behavior. And those who believe in it are immoral beings for having done so and for continuing to condone what, if we strip the euphemisms away, amounts truly to slavery. There is no such thing as being a moral person and saying slavery should continue to exist. If you believe that and condone it, you are condoning something that is immoral, and that makes you an immoral person. So, that's where we wrapped up last week. Before I get to the reading of Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop, I made this little quick slide, which is two people thinking to themselves, I wonder what we should replace the police with. Well, if you claim that police should be abolished, and I absolutely do make that claim, they've always needed to be abolished long before any of the events with George Floyd happened. Okay? I always knew that they must be abolished on moral principle grounds. Okay? All statism is slavery and it's immoral. Police are a part of statism, therefore it's an immoral institution on its face from Jump Street. So when this question is asked, what should we replace the police with? I had my new graphic artist who's doing a fantastic job. I made this and I said, let's make a retort to this question. So my new graphic artist, Mark, made this retort to the question. This is how silly and mentally ill people who ask the question, well, what should we replace the police with? This is what you sound like. You sound like somebody asking a patient who is in recovery from having lung cancer surgery and having a huge tumor cut out of their lungs, saying, what kind of cancer would you like to replace your lung cancer with? Imagine how insane that sounds, because that's what all police are. They're a cancer. They're a blight. They're a plague upon society and always have been and always will be. They are the enforcers of slavery. Order followers, police, military, National Guard. You are the enforcers of human slavery, and you always have been. And you always will be for as long as you continue to do that job. You are low-level members of a satanic death cult. You always have been, you always will be. You are that now. If you are active duty, police, military, National Guard, or any member of government. It does not matter whether you understand that or not. It is still true objectively. Eternally. It's an eternal principle rooted in absolute truth, which, yes, there is such a thing. Only ego-driven, satanically minded people think there are no such things as absolute truths. This is called solipsism. This is called moral relativism. Those who believe there is no absolute moral truth about anything. You are a moral relativist. You are a solipsist. And that is one of the hallmark characteristics of the low-level mini-me Satanism belief system of the big satanic cult. Again, I've explained this before almost ad nauseum about the mindset and beliefs of the high-level satanic cult members of the dark occultists who ultimately run this planet, who are the social engineers and mind controllers of the masses of people, who own and control the politicians, the judges, the police, the military, the media, etc. They've long since bought them out and controlled them since day one. They own all the religions. You know, they all just funnel into the big religion of dark Luciferianism at the very top or apex of the pyramid of power and control. They own all the financial institutions and corporations. They're the royalty, the royal families of ancient Europe and beyond that go back into ancient Babylon, ancient Mesopotamia, okay? Into ancient Egypt, predating that into pre-Diluvian ages. So the ridiculousness of saying, you know, what do you want to replace the police with? You know, I said I'm going to have this drawn or ask somebody to draw it. Well, here it is. By the way, I love Mark's artwork style. I'm going to be able to have some beautiful, very stylistic and unique, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Distinctive, artistic style added to my presentations from here on out. I'm extremely excited about this. And he's fast, too. You know, he did this in a couple hours, basically. So I'm very impressed with it. I love the style. I'm going to be asking him to do a lot more. And, I guess, this is like, David Icke with his former artist, Neil Haig. I got my own Neil Haig now, so I definitely appreciate the effort and I love the style. We're going to be moving forward with a lot more graphics now that I have an in-house graphics person, and I could just, hey, I spit out an idea in my head. Boom, it's on the screen. I would love to take a break from teaching moral philosophy so that I could get this good at digitally painting or drawing or sketching. I think I have that within me somewhere, buried, nested way deep down inside. You know, I'm pretty aesthetic in what I put together. You know, I'm a good digital manipulator, but not too good with original art. If I didn't have to do this, I'd love to turn over my life toward creative expression and get good at things like this. Then I'd be really dangerous if I could really encapsulate digitally, you know, as art, the visions that I see in my mind that I want to bring to life. But now this is going to allow me to do that. And so, you know, I thank all the artists that we're working with now. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for bringing your efforts forward like this. Okay? Thank you to the people who have donated to make things like this possible. Because we're going to move forward with stuff like this. My presentations are going to have some awesome art in them going forward. Okay? So let's move on. And let's get to the real meat of what we're going to be talking about here today. If time allows, we will go to calls. Probably not for this episode. We'll see. Again, this will take as long as it takes. If we have to do a whole call-in show on this topic, I would love to do that and hear your thoughts on this entire topic. Maybe we'll do that next week. Okay? So, let's move forward with Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop. And you know what, folks? I've said it before. I think I've restrained myself a little bit this week. I've gotten, angry a few times, but it's better. I'm going to try to stay focused and on point philosophically, and I'm going to let this document do the talking. I'm going to let it speak for itself. There's no really even need to even add any commentary. It's right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Okay? So, let me switch out in my slides and go to my PDF document. Give me a moment. Let's get that up on the screen. Go right ahead. You can bring it up. Great. So I've put this in, dark mode. I think it looks pretty decent. Let's begin. Now I'm going to read this, okay? For those who may, find that a little tedious or boring, oh well. We're going to hammer this into people and help people who still think any of the police are doing something necessary or quote-unquote good. Let's get the idea of what really goes on behind the scenes. And I've known this since before I started What on Earth is Happening. Years before I started What on Earth is Happening, I've had conversations with people inside police departments. Years before I ever said a word with What on Earth is Happening, I knew what was going on from an insider's perspective. Once again, before I even start this will be the last thing that I'm jumping in. I'm putting the offer one more time on the table. And if the person comes through, or if somebody knows who I'm talking about, I will not say the person's name on the air. It is a male, okay? It's a man, okay? If somebody knows the gentleman that I knew back in the days of Truth, Freedom, Prosperity here in Philadelphia, which was an activist group, they held all the End the Fed rallies here in Philadelphia back in the day, okay? If you know the person I'm talking about who used to be a police dispatcher. He worked as a police dispatcher. He told me all of the insider things that went on in the police department during the quote-unquote Ron Paul revolution. When they would have the Ron Paul revolution rallies and the End the Fed rallies here in Philly, when there was a big, quote, freedom movement. It wasn't really a freedom movement. It was the My Freedom movement. Hate to say it, but that's really what it was. Okay? Not too many truly awakened or enlightened beings, people who woke up to a certain level of the political machinations, but, you bring up spirituality to them, they looked at you like you had, 7 Medusa snakes growing out your neck, They had no understanding of the spiritual component. Very few of them did. A few got there, not many, okay? But this former police dispatcher who quit his job over what he saw and heard would tell me about how police were frothing at the mouth to slaughter animals on no-knock raids. Loved it, were psychopathic killers, and loved what they did. Craved it, frothing at the mouth like mad dogs, craving to go out and kill animals on no-knock raids. If you have a lot of courage built up in your heart, sir, you will have the floor on what on earth is happening. I'll give you a whole show to lay it out. Okay? You'll have the floor. I'll ask a few questions about what happened, and you could explain it all in your own words with no prompting from me. If you want that, contact us. Send an email to my assistant, Leah at whatonearthishappening.com. We'll book you on the show. I'm not going to say that again. That's it. If he wants to do that, or if somebody knows who I'm talking about and wants to find the person and bring that to his attention, you go right ahead. I can't make anybody speak if they don't want to. But if you have the courage to do it, the floor will be yours for a whole show. Here we go. Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop by Officer ACAB, which is obviously an acronym. I would have loved if the person put his own name on this. It would have shown more courage. But this stands for All Cops Are Bastards. Okay, an acronym. So that's not his real name. That's a pen name. I was a police officer for nearly 10 years, and I was a bastard. We all were. This essay has been kicking around in my head for years now, and I've never felt confident enough to write it. It's a time in my life I'm ashamed of. It's a time that I hurt people and, through inaction, allowed others to be hurt. It's a time that I acted as a violent agent of capitalism and white supremacy. Under the guise of public safety, I personally ruined people's lives, but in doing so, made the public no safer. So did the family members and close friends of mine who also bore the badge alongside me. But enough is enough. The reforms aren't working. Incrementalism isn't happening. Unarmed Black, Indigenous, and people of color are being killed by cops in the streets, and the police are savagely attacking the people protesting these murders. American policing is a thick blue tumor strangling the life from our communities, and if you don't believe it when the poor and marginalized say it, if you don't believe it when you see cops across the country shooting journalists with, quote, less than lethal bullets and caustic chemicals, maybe you'll believe it when you hear it straight from the pig's mouth. Why am I writing this? As someone who went through the training, hiring, and socialization of a career in law enforcement, I wanted to give a first-hand account of why I believe police officers are the way they are. Not to excuse their behavior, but to explain it and to indict the structures that perpetuate it. I believe that if everyone understood how we're trained and brought up in the profession, it would inform the demands of our communities should be making of a new way of community safety. If I tell you how we were made, I hope it will empower you to unmake us. One of the other reasons I've struggled to write this essay is that I don't want to center the conversation on myself and my big salty boo-hoo feelings about my bad choices. It's a toxic white impulse to see atrocities and think, how can I make this about me? And again, folks, I'm going to take a break here from reading it because this person has a lot of, quote, white guilt complex, which is a false psychological complex. This is not about race. This is about statism. This is about the belief in authority. This is about the belief that some people have more rights than others. This is about the belief that the state and government and police are morally legitimate entities. That's what it's about. It's not about race. It's not even about capitalism or money. Okay? These are false, paradigmatic dialectics. They're divide and conquer strategies. It was essentially what a dialectic is. Okay? So I'm just going to chime in occasionally when I see a flaw in his explanation / psychological or philosophical framework and correct it a bit. Now, that's his own words, and that's what he thinks. And you could see he's not all the way there in his understanding, but let's go back to it. I just wanted to point that out. So, I hope you'll take me at my word that this account isn't meant to highlight me, but rather the 100,000 of me in every city in the country. It's about the structure that made me, that I chose to pollute myself with. And it's my meager contribution to the cause of radical justice. Yes, all cops are bastards. I was a police officer in a major metropolitan area in California with a predominantly poor, non-white population, with a large proportion of first-generation immigrants. One night, during briefing, our watch commander told us that the city council had requested a new zero-tolerance policy against murderers, drug dealers, or child predators. He's asking the question, against murderers, drug dealers, or child predators? No, against homeless people collecting cans from recycling bins. That's who the new zero tolerance policy was against. Homeless people going around collecting aluminum cans from recycling bins. That's who his commander in the police force said, we have a new zero tolerance policy. You know, would have been bad enough if it was against drug dealers. It wasn't against murderers or pedophiles. No, it was against homeless people collecting cans that other people threw away. See, the city had some kickback deal with the waste management company where waste management got paid by the government for our expected tonnage of recycling. When homeless people, quote unquote, stole that recycling from the waste management company, they were putting that cheaper contract in peril. So we were to arrest as many recyclers as we could find. Even for me, this was a stupid policy, and I promptly blew Sarge off. But a few hours later, Sarge called me over to assist him. He was detaining a 70-year-old immigrant who spoke no English, who he'd seen picking a Coke can out of a trash bin. He ordered me to arrest her for stealing trash. I said, Sarge, come on, she's an old lady. He said, I don't give a shit. Hook her up, that's an order. Meaning cuff her and arrest her. And I did. She cried the entire way to the station and all throughout the booking process. I couldn't even comfort her because I didn't speak any English. Any Spanish. I didn't speak Spanish. Sorry. I felt disgusting, but I was ordered to make this arrest and I wasn't willing to lose my job for her. Does that sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? Order following. This is what all cops are. They break down into the order followers and the psychopaths. And ultimately, they're all order followers. A lot of them, increasingly even, most of them are psychopaths, unfortunately, in today's world. But this is what we talked about on the last several weeks of What on Earth is Happening. Order followers and psychopaths make up the police forces. This person is acknowledging, I was an order follower. You could say he had some knowledge of right and wrong. That's called conscience. The knowledge of the objective difference between what behaviors are right and what behaviors are wrong. So you can hear in his explanation of his former behaviors, he is saying he knows that it was wrong, but why did he do it anyway? He ignored his conscience or knowledge. That is why I can make the claim some order followers have conscience, but they don't follow their conscience. They follow their orders. See, that's why they're order followers, not followers of conscience. You can't do the two things simultaneously because an order follower means you do what you were commanded to do, whether it was right or wrong or not. Doesn't matter. You are saying, yes, sir, I will follow that command or order, whether it is correct morally or not. That's the definition of what it means to follow an order. Therefore, all order followers are bad people morally on first principles. You cannot be simultaneously following an order and following conscience. It is an impossibility in nature, objectively. Get that straight. Get your philosophy about that straight. If you don't understand that, you're incorrect. You have your philosophy mixed up, confused, incorrect. Then you build on top of a false axiomatic belief. All of your behaviors that follow upon that belief are also going to be flawed and also going to be immoral. That is why it is so important to be correct, philosophically and morally. Read the works of Richard R. Wetherill. He wrote a book called Be Right or Go Wrong. This is what he meant by this. You cannot get your behaviors straight according to moral, natural law if you are not first correct about what behaviors objectively are right behaviors or objectively wrong behaviors. So this person knows what he was ordered to do was objectively wrong, and he did it anyway. Why did he do it anyway? Because he has such low self-esteem and he was so self-loathing at the time, he could not exercise conscience, so he followed an immoral order instead, even though he knew it to be wrong, because he's the kind of person who thinks, I can't lose my job. This is all I know how to do, because he has no self-worth, no confidence in himself as a human being to go out and get another job that is right livelihood, that is a moral job. Do you understand, viewing audience? I'll repeat it 70,000 more times if I have to. Do you understand the underlying moral principles and philosophy regarding that I've just stepped out of this reading to explain? Because I'll do it another 70,000 times if I have to. Okay? So let's go back to the reading and continue with what the order follower did. I couldn't even comfort her because I didn't speak Spanish. I felt disgusting, but I was ordered to make the arrest and I wasn't willing to lose my job for her. No, former order follower, you weren't willing to lose your job, your immoral job, to do the right thing, which is what following conscience is. So I'm going to correct his axiomatic errors from time to time and explain how it really is in nature. All right, let's continue. If you're tempted to feel sympathy for me, don't. I used to happily hassle the homeless under other circumstances. I researched obscure penal codes so I could arrest people in homeless encampments for lesser known crimes like remaining too close to railroad property. Section 369I of the California Penal Code. I used to call it planting warrant seeds, since I knew they wouldn't make their court dates and we could arrest them again and again for warrant violations. Look at what a piece of dirt this person was. This is what it means to be a bad person and a piece of dirt, whose parents were probably also immoral pieces of fucking trash and didn't raise this person morally. And this is what people think are good people. This is what you'll hear, oh, it's just one bad apple. No, the concept, it's not some bad apples. The entire institution is immoral, all of them. On their face, it's immoral because no one can have rights that others do not possess. No one can grant rights that an individual does not possess as an individual. Get that straight, minarchists out there. Your moral philosophy is fundamentally, axiomatically flawed. And since very, very few people will tell you that, I'll tell you that right to your face. Let's continue. We used to have informal contests for who could cite or arrest someone for the weirdest law. Listen to this. Contests about taking someone's freedom. For the weirdest law. For the things that don't even hurt anybody when people do. DUI on a bicycle. Non-regulation number of brooms on your tow truck. Some stupid code. Shit like that. For me, police work was a logic puzzle for arresting people, regardless of their actual threat to the community. In other words, regardless of actual morality. As ashamed as I am to admit it, it needs to be said. Stripping people of their freedom felt like a game to me for many years. Folks, he's not alone. This is most of them. Most of them take this attitude and approach. I've been told by insiders, it's most of them. It's not some of them, it's most of them. I know what you're going to ask. Did I ever plant drugs? Did I ever plant a gun on somebody? Did I ever make a false arrest or file a false report? Believe it or not, the answer is no. Cheating was no fun. I like to get my stats the legitimate way. But I knew officers who kept a little baggie of whatever, or maybe a pocket knife that was a little too big in their war bag. Yeah, we call our duffel bags war bags. Did I ever tell anybody about it? No, I did not. Did I ever confess my suspicions when cocaine suddenly showed up in a gang member's jacket? No, I did not. In fact, let me tell you about an extremely formative experience. In my police academy class, we had a clique of around 6 trainees who routinely bullied and harassed other students, intentionally scuffing another trainee's shoes to get them in trouble during inspection, sexually harassing female trainees, cracking racist jokes, and so on. Every quarter, we were to write anonymous evaluations of our squad mates. I wrote scathing accounts of their behavior, thinking I was helping keeping bad apples out of law enforcement and believing I would be protected. Instead, the academy staff read my complaints to them out loud and outed me to them and never punished me, causing me to get harassed for the rest of my academy class. That's how I learned that even police leadership hates rats. That's why no one is, quote, changing things from the inside. They can't. The structure won't allow it. And that's the point of what I'm telling you. Whether you were my sergeant, legally harassing old women, me, legally harassing our residents, my fellow trainees, bullying the rest of us, or, quote, the bad apples, illegally harassing, quote, shitbags, we were all in it together. I knew cops that pulled women over to flirt with them. I knew cops who would pepper spray sleeping bags so that homeless people would have to throw them away. I knew cops that intentionally provoked anger in suspects so they could claim they were assaulted. I was particularly good at winding people up verbally until they lashed out so I could fight them. Nobody spoke up, nobody stood out, nobody betrayed the code. Because it's a cult. Let's call it what it is. It's a cult. It's not even a secret society, folks. It's a cult. Police are a cult. They always have been a cult. They're a cult now, and they always will be a cult. Stop euphemizing it. This is how cults operate. And people dare to say what on earth is happening is some kind of a cult. Fuck you. We are the anti-cult. I am teaching all the methodologies of cults and exposing them to the entire world so people fucking quit their fucking cults. Dumb fuck. And I'm not going to apologize for it. You're just a dumb fuck and can't understand what I do here every fucking week. I expose the methodologies and mindset of cults. And jerk-offs say, this is a cult. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about, punk bitch. I expose the methods of cults to try to destroy all cults. Back to the reading. None of us protected the people from bad cops. Let me read that one more time. No, let me read that 3 more times. None of us protected the people, or in other words, you, from bad cops. None of us protected the people from bad cops. None of us, meaning the police, protected the people from bad cops. This is what jackasses out there actually believe is being done. That the police protect you from anyone, most of all themselves. You're a jackass, know-nothing, psychological punk bitch child. And you won't hear anybody else pretty much in the world tell you that. I'll tell you that. Come up to my face and see me about it. Because I'm not afraid to say it to somebody as long as it's the truth. And once again, you're the problem who doesn't get it. Let me reiterate that 3 times. If you don't get that, you're the problem. You're the problem? You are the problem. You have not received moral philosophy properly. The flaw is in your mind and in your ego, boy. The flaw is in your mind and in your ego, girl. That's where the flaw is, not with me. Not in how I've taught it. None of them ever protect people. None of them ever protect people from the sick, psychopathic, twisted fucks in their own ranks. Get it through your ignorant, hard-headed skulls. Back to the reading. This is why all cops are bastards. And what he means here is all cops are bad people. All cops are immoral people according to the actual objective definition of what it means to be a bad person. Even your uncle, even your cousin, even your mom, even your brother, even your best friend, even your spouse, even me. Finally, someone has the balls to tell the truth, that they're a bad person. Because even if they wouldn't do the thing themselves, they will almost never rat out another officer who does the thing, much less stop it from happening. Meaning actually arrest the person who's actually doing immoral behavior, namely their own officers. Bastard 101. I could write an entire book of the awful things I've done, seen, done, and heard others bragging about doing. But to me, the bigger question is, how did it get this way? While I was a police officer in a city 30 miles from where I lived, many of my fellow officers were from the community. I treated their neighbors and treated their neighbors just as badly as I did. While every cop's individual biases come into play, it's the profession itself that is toxic. And it starts from day one of training. Now let me read his statement again here. While every cop's individual biases do come into play, it's the profession itself that is toxic. And it starts from day one of training. Every police academy is different, but all of them share certain features. Taught by old cops, run like a paramilitary boot camp, strong emphasis on protecting yourself more than anyone else. The majority of my time in the academy was spent doing aggressive physical training and watching video after video after video of police officers being murdered on duty. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm stepping out of the reading momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, go back to the series in the podcast archives where I taught all of the methodologies of cults. What are the 4 methodologies? Or at least a few of them. The first is separate your potential cult members from the rest of society. Isolation from the rest of society. Okay, what's next? Total indoctrination. Okay? Us versus them mindset and trauma. These are all the classical indoctrination techniques of cults throughout the centuries. This is what police boot camp is. This is what police academy is. It's cult techniques. What are they doing? They're isolating them from the rest of culture, from the rest of society. They are spending the entire day putting them through aggressive physical training to wear them out so that they're not thinking logically. And then they're traumatizing them by showing them videos of murders day in and day out over and over again. This is right from a police officer telling you how they do it. What he really doesn't understand is that these very techniques are all right out of the playbook of classical cult methodologies throughout the centuries of human history. Every single cult in all of human history has engaged in the exact same techniques. It's called the techniques of cults. And I've gone over it tons of times. I did whole shows on it, on what on earth is happening. The shows were techniques of cults. Go back in the podcast archive and watch it in its entirety. As a matter of fact, don't just watch that by itself. Watch the whole damn podcast in order. All 229 episodes, and only go forward in order. And then you will understand. Those who do not understand, I guarantee you haven't done that because you're fucking lazy. Stop making excuses and do it and get your fucking head right. Back to the reading. I want to highlight this. Nearly everyone coming into law enforcement is bombarded with dash cam footage of police officers being ambushed and killed over and over and over. Read cult technique. That's what you should read there. Cult technique. Colorless VHS mortality plays. Cops screaming for help over their radios. Their bodies going limp as a pair of taillights speed away into a grainy black horizon. In my case, with commentary from an old racist cop who used to brag about assaulting Black Panthers. To understand why all cops are bastards, you need to understand one of the things almost every training officer told me when it came to using force. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Meaning, I'll take my chances in court rather than risk getting hurt. And guess what? Courts always let them off. They never even goes to court, which we're going to get to and talk about. It's called qualified immunity for police officers. See, I'll take that attitude when it comes to giving up my rights to police. I'll be judged by 12 rather than carried by 6. You know? Because that's what these people are, potential murderers. That's what the police are, potential murdering cult members. We're able to think that way because police unions are extremely overpowered and because of the generous concept of qualified immunity, a legal theory which says a cop generally can't be held personally liable for mistakes they make doing their job in an official capacity. No, ladies and gentlemen, they're flawless gods. They're not personally responsible for anything they do that's morally wrong. No, they're above the rest of humanity as gods, entrenched above all of the rest of the lesser minions, subjects, and slaves. Don't you know? You're held personally responsible for the littlest fucking thing you do that they say is wrong, even though if it's not wrong. But they can murder people with total immunity and get away with it. That's what qualified immunity is. And almost every cop in the entire country and actually in the entire world has it going for them. Qualified immunity. In other words, you can rape, pillage, and murder with absolutely no impunity, with no physical repercussions coming back your way. That's what they are told, with impunity. You know, that's what qualified immunity is. License to do total wrongdoings, theft, and murder with complete impunity, meaning unpunished. When you look at the actions of the officers who killed George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, David McAtee, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, or Freddie Gray, remember that they, like me, were trained to recite, "I'd rather be judged by 12" as a mantra. Even if mistakes were made, the city, meaning taxpayers, meaning you, pays the settlement, not the officer. That TM is mistakes were made trademark. It's not super scripted. Sorry. I missed that in my editing of the document. The TM should be super scripted. Minor detail. Once police training has, through repetition, indoctrination, and violent spectacle, promised officers that everyone in the world is out to kill them, the next lesson is that your partners are the only people protecting you. Occasionally, this is even true. I've had encounters turn on me rapidly to the point that I legitimately thought that I was going to die, only to have other officers come and turn the tables. One of the most important thought leaders in law enforcement, one of the most important thought leaders in law enforcement is Colonel David Grossman, a killologist who wrote an essay called Sheep, Wolves, and Sheepdogs. Cops are the sheepdogs. Bad guys are the wolves, and the citizens are the sheep. See, they're trying to reframe that satanic death cult image that I showed earlier. That's why I brought it up again. They are trying to reframe that in their favor, saying they're the sheepdog who's protecting the human herd and protecting each other. No, incorrect. You are a low-level member of the satanic death cult that is culling and devouring humanity. I am one of the sheepdogs who is protecting people by putting the truth out there. Let's not get it twisted, punk. Don't ascribe false courage to yourself. You're a totally non-courageous, shit-for-brains coward. I'm the courageous human being. Shit-for-brains punk bitch. Let's get it straight, boy. Me and the people who do this great work are the ones with courage. And we're the ones bringing some level of protection through knowledge to the human fucking sheep out there. Not you, punk bitch. So they're giving this false interpretation of them as the courageous sheepdogs that are trying to protect humanity by putting the word out there. No. You're a member of the satanic death cult. And you always have been. You're just too dumb to know it. Cops are the sheepdogs, bad guys are the wolves, and the citizens are the sheep. Colonel Grossman makes sure to mention that to a stupid sheep, a sheepdog looks more like wolves than sheep, and that's why they dislike you. No, they dislike you because even at a subconscious level, they know you're immoral pieces of fucking dirt, fucking trash, boy. That's what they know at a subconscious level. That's why they don't like you or respect you. You're not worthy of respect. You don't respect yourself because ultimately you're deep inside. You're chicken shit coward little boys who never grew up in consciousness. You don't have any real courage. You're members of a fucking street gang that people believe have authority over them. That's all you ever have been. You're pieces of dirt. You're low-life trash fucking parents never morally raised. That's what you are, shithead. This, quote, they hate you for protecting them, and only I love you, only I can protect you tactic is familiar to students of abuse. Partially true, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know who it's very familiar to? People who have studied the techniques of cults. That's who it's intimately familiar to. This is one of the techniques of cults, putting people through abuse, physically and psychologically. And then telling them, you're the savior as the cult leader. This is one of the main techniques of cults. Do me a favor. Have somebody on the team put on Drive the slides that comprise the techniques of cults. I'm going to put them in here on the fly. Okay? Ask Leah to do it on the fly. I want somebody to go back in the podcast archive, pull down techniques of cults I haven't put it in my presentation, and I want to, on the fly, put it up on the screen for people to see. Okay? Let's see if we can get that done. If not, hey, it's what it is. But if we can get that in Drive, please direct me to it. Put it in the show notes area, right next to the show notes, and I'll get it in my presentation. Please, thank you. If you can accomplish that. I know it's a on-the-fly request, but let's see. So, continuing this, they hate you for protecting them, and only I love you, only I can protect you tactic is familiar to students of abuse. It's what abusers do to coerce their victims into isolation. First technique of all cults. Pulling them away from friends and family and ensnaring them in the abuser's toxic web. Law enforcement does this too, pitting the officers against civilians. They don't understand what you do. Quote, they don't understand what you do. They don't respect your sacrifice. They just want to get away with crimes. You're only safe with us, end quote. You know, this is what the police teach their membership. It's a cult. Indoctrinating their low-level members through trauma and repetition. There you go. Isolation, repetition, us versus them attitude, and trauma. That's it. Conformity and trauma. I think the wolves versus sheepdog dynamic is one of the most important elements as to why officers behave the way they do. Every single second of my training, I was told that criminals were not a legitimate part of their community, that they were individual bad actors, and that their bad actions were solely the result of their inherent criminality. Let me read that again, because this is what I talked about. The first thing to understand about why police must be abolished is, where does bad human behavior come from? This was the first philosophical, true, eternally true tenet of where bad behavior comes from. And the police are teaching people the exact opposite of that eternal truth. Okay? I was told, listen to what he's saying here. This is critically important to understand, ladies and gentlemen. Focus in and listen. Every single second of my training, I was told that criminals were not a legitimate part of their community, that they were individual bad actors, and that their bad actions were solely the result of their inherent criminality. Go back to last week's show of the 5 eternal truths why police should and must be abolished. Point number 1 is that bad behavior, people engaged in bad behaviors do not emerge from their mother's womb that way. It's not inherent behavior. It's learned behavior. It's learned through culture. It's learned through bad parenting. It is learned through indoctrination. Bad information goes into the human brain and mind by the garbage that's put in there through all those bad methods of bad parenting, bad media, bad schooling, bad, information coming in through the media, etc. What results? What is the manifested result on the other side of garbage going in? Garbage comes out and manifests in our society in the form of bad behavior. What do you think? The police are exempt from that process of garbage in? Garbage information goes in. Garbage information comes out in the form of behavior. What? Police are exempt from that? No, it's the same exact thing. That's why their behaviors are immoral, just like criminal behaviors of the average person out there are also immoral. They're no different. They're just as ignorant. They're just as ill-informed. They haven't corrected that axiomatically flawed understanding of where bad behavior comes from, and they insist that they're correct and that it doesn't come from where I just explained. Their ego is in the way, and they think they have it figured out, and they haven't figured shit out. Just like most of my listening audience, you haven't gone far enough. You're not all the way there. You haven't figured it out. Look, I need to do a whole nother show. Well, I need to do a barragingly hammering show on what human nature is not. What human nature is and what human nature is not. That's the next show after the call-in show. We're going to delay other shows. The next show after the call-in for this topic is what human nature is and is not. And the big part about it really is I should just call the show What Human Nature Is Not. We'll remove all of those things and then we'll come down to an understanding of what it actually is. Because people still make that. This is the other thing I hear in the so-called freedom movement. I hear total fucktarded jackasses spouting. Now let's take it away from the slide for a moment. The Vomit Man's making another appearance. Okay, let's go. Hold on, let me bring it up. And let's go back to... Let's hear from the average dumb fuck in the My Freedom movement. Yeah, I know what human nature is, you know. Human nature, it's just, people are just bad. You know, it's just, they're inherently either good or bad. It doesn't have anything to do with information that they take in through their formative years and then just believe about what culture and media told them and what their shithead parents told them or what their shithead teachers told them or what the shithead media told them. No, they come out of their mother's womb, either good or bad. That's just what human nature is. It's just human nature to be a certain way. That's not the human condition. That's just human nature. You're a fucking idiot. You're a fucking idiot. And you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. That's how dumb you sound, boy. You know nothing, truly, in understanding about how it really works and functions. Zero. That's why you can't do the great work. You haven't even gathered the knowledge. You're not even at the grammar step of the Trivium process. You're not even there because you think that human nature equates to the current human condition. No. People are the way that they are right now because they've been conditioned to be and behave the way they are now. It is not their nature. You are incorrect. Little shit, know nothing, shit for brains person. You're incorrect. That's not human nature. That's the human condition. So we're going to do a whole show where I belaboringly and slowly and repetitively fucking hammer it into your fucking dumb skull. Numbskull. Because let me tell you something, folks, and then for the people who say, oh, you're just talking at the people who refuse to get it. No, you're wrong. It's some of my own fucking listenership. You're wrong. It's some of the people who are out there at the rhetoric stage trying to tell people they know and they know what the solutions are, and they haven't even arrived at the grammar stage properly of the Trivium methodology. They're out there putting the work out, saying that they know what's going on, and they don't know a fucking thing about what's going on. They're spouting bullshit rhetoric before they've even pieced together the grammar. You got your order of operations out of order. Go look up PEMDAS and get your order of operations straight, ass. Okay? You know, there's an order of operation in mathematics. It's called PEMDAS. Look it up. PEMDAS, parentheses. What's the second one? Parentheses, exponents, then multiplication and division in order from left to right, and then addition and subtraction in order from left to right. You know, a person in second grade should understand that. The acronym PEMDAS. Well, guess what? Dumb fucks out there, even in the freedom movement, you got your order of operations incorrect. Get your grammar underneath your ass before you go to the rhetoric stage. And then guess what? Go through the middle step as well, which is true logic. Weed through all of the logical inconsistencies and go through and process all that data, all that grammar, all those building blocks, and understand it truly before you start spouting rhetoric. Most of you haven't done that, and you're out of order. You know, it makes sense when you look at it that way from the perspective of the Trivium. You're out of order. And that's why you make no goddamn sense logically. You haven't truly developed logic and reason. So, I'm told, very kindly, some of my staff has put these images up. Keep it on me for a second while I grab a couple of these images. It'll only take a second. And I'm going to show you what the techniques of cults are. Okay? Because I feel it's a good refresher and people really should understand this and know it. Okay? So, I could do this on the fly here. Let's bring it right up in a second. Hold on. I just hit the wrong button there. One more second. Let's go full screen with this. Okay, great. Switch back. Thank you to my staff. Very attentive. I really appreciate that. And guess what, folks? This is what it makes possible to do on the fly here on What on Earth is Happening, because I have an attentive staff on duty during the show. Thank you, guys. It's very appreciated. Great job. Okay, let's go back to the slides. This is what your generosity, folks, in helping me to achieve this level of production and production values has made possible. Okay? So look, we can just do things like this on the fly now. Techniques of cults, or how to brainwash willing followers who want to give away personal responsibility for their own actions. The techniques of cults eternally throughout all of human history have been the same. Isolation, conformity, indoctrination through repetition, and trauma. And I stepped through this previously. The mental and emotional trauma. That was 4B. These aren't in order. Let me just I'll step out. It doesn't matter for a second. Let me bring them up in order. Conformity. So cult technique number 1. Let me see if I can grab it. Yeah, isolation is first. Okay? Cult technique number 1, isolation. Physical separation from the rest of the community. This is boot camp and or police academy. Creation of an us versus them mentality. Demonization of outsiders or those who don't belong. Give me a second. See if I can get them in order. You could step out of there. Just step out of there while I do this. Take 1 second. Yeah, can't get them in order. Just give me 1 second. All right, now they're in order. Okay, go back. There's always workarounds for people. There's always workaround for things, folks. Not one way of doing things. If one technique doesn't work, you got to go on to the next technique. We're going to be teaching that in the seminar. Okay, I got them in order correctly now. That one's just not big enough. There we go. Okay, cult technique number 2, conformity. No individuality tolerated. One's old identity must be completely shed. Uniforms to create sameness in appearance. Go back. Yep, thank you. And sameness in speech and behavior. This is the second technique of all cults throughout human history. Next one. Indoctrination through repetition. Rigorous schedules and instructions. Repetitive behaviors like obstacle courses, drills, formations, marching in step, etc. This is what tires people out, puts them in the R complex of the brain so that they can't use the neocortical brain, the human brain, to logically think and reason and come to accurate conclusions about what they're a part of or what's being done to them. Repeated phrases, chants, or songs. All cults do that. Next slide. This is technique 4A out of technique 4, which is trauma. We have physical trauma and then psychological or mental and emotional trauma. So 4A is physical trauma. High levels of activity to the point of exhaustion. That's what you heard him explain earlier in the document. Low sleep time and disrupted sleep. High carbohydrate and low nutrient diet. This fucks your brain up so you can't think and reason properly. Last part of the technique of cults was 4B. Let me bring it up. Hold on. It was... Sorry. 1 second. 4B we can switch to. Okay. Mental and emotional trauma. Verbal and psychological abuse. Unexpected, sudden, and shocking scenarios like waking people up to do drills in the middle of the night. And a perpetual atmosphere of fear. like playing videos of police being killed over and over and over and over again to them. That's mental and emotional trauma. Every technique of cults is in place in military boot camp and in police academies. Every single one. I'm going to step back to the regular slides in a second. Thank you for that. Staff members, I really appreciate you doing that on the fly. I think it really hammers the point home when you see it in real time there. Okay? So let's go back to the reading. Once police training has, through repetition, indoctrination, and violent spectacle... Oh, we went forward past this. Sorry. We were on the next page. Okay. All right, here we go. So, every single second of my training, I was told... So, we were talking about that they have no understanding of human nature. They're constantly sold on the idea that human beings are just bad apples out of the womb. That bad behavior is inherent. They don't understand that human nature is the ability to be programmed. The ability to be programmed extremely badly, or the ability to be programmed through truth very well. If you're programmed badly, bad behavior manifests and is the result. If you're programmed well, good behavior, moral behavior is the result or the manifested reality that you get in all of society. And that happens on the aggregate scale, and that is called the world that then we must all together live in. And these dumb ignoramuses don't understand that is what human nature is, and they're trying to sell their cult membership on the idea that it's just behaviors are inherent. No, they are not. And I know a lot of the assholes out there, even watching, you still haven't gotten that hammered through your thick fucking skulls. And I'll be the one, I really don't give a shit if you're offended by that. I'm the one who will tell you that. I'll tell you, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And you're wrong. And your ego's in the way. And it's blocking correct reception and understanding of what human nature really is versus what the human condition is. That is not the nature of humanity, because what nature means is it's eternal and it cannot be changed. Let me say that again. What nature means is it's just that way, it's eternal, and it cannot change. That is not what people claim human nature is. They claim all these things. Oh, people are just greedy. That's human nature. No, that's not an eternal state of humanity that cannot be changed. People have been conditioned into being greedy. People are just lazy. That's human nature. No, wrong, incorrect. Incorrect. That's part of the human condition. People who are lazy now can be very industrious if they decide through their will to change their behavior, and that is possible to do. That may be hard work, but it can be done. It is not eternally one way. That's called a condition that is in place. Get it through your thick fucking skull that that's how it works. Because if you explain it to other people that it doesn't work like that, you're part of the problem. You're undoing the great work by telling people, no, this dynamic is incorrect when I talk about what human nature really is. No, if you don't understand what that is, you're part of the problem. Get your grammar underneath yourself first as a foundation before you start to speak and spout bullshit rhetoric. Get your understanding under you first before you step to the third stage of the Trivium and start putting rhetoric out that you're completely incorrect about. You're doing harm. You're doing harm. I want this played for people out there who have it wrong. Show them this video. Make them watch it. I know you can't make somebody watch something. Influence them enough to watch it. Maybe you'll come out the other side with a little less hardened fucking ego. You think you know when you don't, and that's the most dangerous thing there is. Again, drink deeply from the Pierian spring or don't drink at all. And it's not a kind of bottled spring water. Ancient Greek philosophy about drinking from the fount of knowledge known as the Pierian spring. It means if you're going to drink a tiny little sip from it, you might as well not bother, because then you're going to think you know and you don't know fucking shit. That's what it means. Don't think you're enlightened when you're not, because you went half-ass in your knowledge gathering and in your knowledge understanding. You didn't go through the first two most important stages of the Trivium before actually doing action, the rhetoric stage, based on correct understanding that came from the gathering of knowledge, of pertinent data. If you don't do those first two steps correctly of the Trivium process, you can never do the third one, which is true wisdom, the rhetoric stage of the Trivium, correctly. And this is where most people in the so-called truth community are at, because they don't have that true scientific truth discovery process under their belts. In other words, there are people who think they know, and they've done the Trivium process either incorrectly or out of order, and therefore they don't really know. Yet they have their mouth open, spouting verbal diarrhea all day long. So let's continue with the reading. Let's go back to the slides. Thank you. Any concept of systematic trauma, generational poverty, he's talking about culture here, or white supremacist oppression, was either never mentioned or simply dismissed. Right, because they don't want their cult members to understand how human behavior is created. You don't teach your cult members the Trivium, you know? After all, most people don't steal. So anyone who does isn't most people, right? To us, anyone committing a crime deserved anything that happened to them because they broke the, quote, social contract, which is another bullshit myth. And yet it was never even questioned as to whether the power structure above them was honoring any sort of contract back. There is no contract. There is no such thing as the social contract. You're either a moral being because you've taken in correct information and therefore your behavior is in alignment with objective morality under natural law, or you're an immoral being because you've taken in incorrect information and your behavior is out of alignment with objective morality under natural law. That's how it really works. Understand, police officers are part of the state monopoly on violence. There is no such thing as a monopoly on violence or a right to ever use violence. They're part of a state monopoly on the use of external force upon others, which can be moral or immoral. That's what the state wants, is a monopoly on the usage of physical force. Police officers are part of the state monopoly on violence, and all police training reinforces this monopoly as a cornerstone of police work, a source of honor and pride. Many cops fantasize about getting to kill someone in the line of duty. Let me read that again. Many cops fantasize about getting to kill someone in the line of duty. You want to know why, folks? Because many of them are psychopaths. And again, there is such a thing as an inherent genetic psychopath because their brain is broken at birth through different ways. We could talk about that. I did whole shows on what primary psychopathy is, which is essentially physical brain damage. That's what primary psychopathy is. It's a form of physical brain retardation and or brain damage. That's what it is. And yes, some people do emerge from the womb like that. The vast, overwhelming majority of psychopaths are created through cultural conditions and environmental conditions. Traumatic conditions that they have undergone, mostly when they were a child. That numbs out the emotions and destroys the limbic brain, which is responsible for the generation of the peptide chemicals that help us to feel emotions physically in the body through the midbrain or mammalian brain, the limbic brain. I've talked about this endlessly. Go back to the former podcasts and do your homework. There is such a thing as secondary psychopathy where that happens over a period of time. People ask for that to be clarified. It's been clarified. I just did it again. There are primary psychopaths. It's a form of brain damage. There are secondary psychopaths. It's also a form of brain damage which can be undone because it got that way through cultural conditions and trauma. Go back to the shows I did on psychopathy and listen in its entirety. Continuing. Let me read it one more time. Many cops fantasize about getting to kill someone in the line of duty. Egged on by others that have gotten to do that. One of my training officers told me about the time he shot and killed a mentally ill, homeless man wielding a big stick. He bragged that he, quote, slept like a baby that night. This is the kind of trash that comprises the police forces. Official training teaches you how to be violent effectively, and when you're legally allowed to deploy that violence. But, quote, unofficial training teaches you to desire violence, to expand the breadth of your violence without getting caught, and to erode your own compassion for desperate people so you can justify punitive violence against them. In other words, unofficially, what all the police forces throughout the world are ultimately doing are acting as a breeding grounds for secondary psychopathy. They are creating secondary psychopaths. Whether the person is a born psychopath or not, they are active cult breeding grounds for secondary psychological psychopathy. Breeding grounds for psychopaths to run amok in our society, posing as our protectors and defenders. That's what police forces are. How to be a bastard. I have participated in some of these activities personally. Others are ones I either witnessed personally or heard officers brag about openly. Very, very occasionally, I knew an officer who was me to I apologize for that, folks. I may have inadvertently caused a bad connection with my mic. I apologize for that. I needed something to drink and I clapped my microphone with my glass. I'm usually pretty good about that, but it happens. So he's saying, I have participated in some of these activities personally. Others are ones I either witnessed personally or heard officers brag about openly. Very, very occasionally, I knew an officer who was disciplined or fired for one of these things. So here's the list. Police officers will lie about the law, about what's legal, or about what they can legally do to you in order to manipulate you into doing what they want. And they'll face no repercussions for that lying. They're liars. They're bad people not only because of what they do, but because of what they say. They're liars. They're deliberate liars. And get off about the fact that they're deliberate liars trying to manipulate people into either criminalizing themselves or admitting something that has gone against one of their ridiculous code restrictions. So they will lie about the law, about what is legal or illegal, or about what they can legally do to you in order to manipulate you into doing what they want. That's one of the hallmark characteristics of a psychopath. The willingness to lie to get their way or to manipulate people into giving them their way. We talked about this last week and when we went over all of the hallmark characteristics of psychopaths a number of times on the show. Police officers will lie about feeling afraid for their life to justify the use of force after the fact. They'll tell you, oh, I was fearful for my life. No, you weren't fearful for your life. You just lied about it to get away with hurting someone else or hurting an animal. Police officers will lie and tell you they'll file a police report just to get you off their back. Police officers will lie that your cooperation will look good for you in court or that they will put in a good word for you with the DA. Untrue. The police will never help you look good in court. Police officers will lie about what they see and hear to access private property, to conduct unlawful searches that go against Fourth Amendment restrictions. Without any doubt. Okay? They lie to get access to private property. They'll lie about what they've seen or what they've allegedly heard. They're liars. They're liars. Almost all of them. Dirty liars. Police officers will lie and say your friend already ratted you out, so you might as well rat them back out. This is almost never true. Police officers will lie and say you're not in trouble in order to get you to exit a location or otherwise make an arrest more convenient for them. Police officers will lie and say they won't arrest you if you'll just be honest with them so they know what really happened. They're liars. And they say they can just legally lie with total impunity, just doing something that's completely immoral to entrap people, and they don't have to be responsible for it. It's called being an immoral piece of fucking trash. And all of them are that. Not just some, all of them. All of them are privy to this. All of them know this is going on. All of them allow it to continue. That's why every single one of them is a piece of immoral fucking dirt. They are partaking in the evil. A good person doesn't partake in evil. A good person says, I will not participate in evil no matter what you do to me or threaten me with. These are evil people who participate in institutionalized evil, and that makes them evil people. That's the definition of what it means to be a bad person. Get it straight morally. Get it straight philosophically. Get it straight from a first principles-based, solid groundwork of true moral philosophy, which is what we teach here on What on Earth is Happening. Police officers will lie about their ability to seize the property of friends and family members to coerce a confession. Police officers will write obviously bullshit tickets so that they get time and a half, overtime, fighting them in court. Police officers will search places and containers you didn't consent to and later claim they were open or smelled like marijuana. They'll make up what they consider groundwork, legitimate grounds for searches and just say, it was already open when they broke into it. Or say, it smelled like, some illicit substance that they shouldn't even have the right to arrest anybody for in the first place. And they'll just say, I thought I saw cocaine residue, or I thought I smelled, cannabis, so that they can break in someplace. They're liars. You're dirty liars, all of you. And the ones who just look the other way and protect their cult members. You're liars, and you're immoral people, and your deeds have been exposed. And they're going to continue to be exposed until you're not just shamed out of that job, but physically forced out of it if it has to come to that. Because you're dirty, immoral scum, trash liars. And your parents fucked you up, boy. Your parents fucked you up, girl. You had trash for parents, and you grew up to be trash. And I'll tell it to you just like that to your motherfucking face. Police officers will threaten a more serious crime they can't prove in order to convince you to confess to the lesser crime that they really want you for. This is their dirty liar tactics of this cult. Police officers will employ zero tolerance on races and ethnicities they dislike because they're dirty, rotten, racist pieces of trash. You know how big racism runs in police forces? The majority of police are racist trash in both directions. Doesn't matter what in any direction. It doesn't matter what color there are. Almost all of them are racist trash. I've heard enough from the inside to know that statement is true. The vast overwhelming majority of police are racists. You're not just immoral people. You're not just liars. You're racist too. And it's egging on further racism. Because there are people who would dare to claim me doing this to expose this for as many years as I've been fucking exposing it, trying to say I have some privilege or I'm racist. The fucking nerve of you. Now, you're not going to push your bullshit Marxist guilt on me, motherfucker. You don't know what I've done or what I've fucking seen or what I've been through or what I know. You're not going to tell me that. Quite frankly, you don't fucking know what I know. I've said it many times and I'll keep saying it. And you certainly don't know what I've sacrificed to do. And then motherfuckers are going to try to tell me I'm somehow racist. I told people since day one that's a total indoctrination, divide and conquer dialectic tactic to enslave people. There's only one race, it's called the human race. Even that is a dialectical identity. There's consciousness and morality, and that's all there is. That's it. There's alignment to natural law and consciousness, or you are not in alignment to it. That's the only divide there is. That's the only true divide. Everything else is an illusion of separation. But there is that separation in consciousness. And that's one of the biggest things that it means to be awake, is you understand there can be no such thing as authority. That is a euphemism for coercion, violence, and slavery, which is what police continuously enforce. Police officers will employ zero tolerance on races and ethnicities they dislike and show favor and lenience to members of their own racial group. Police officers will use intentionally extra painful maneuvers and holds to arrest during an arrest to provoke resistance so they can further assault the suspect. He's seen this personally. I've seen and heard about it personally. Some police officers will plant drugs and weapons on you, sometimes to teach you a lesson, sometimes if they kill you somewhere away from the public view. Legalized murder. Some police officers will assault you to intimidate you and threaten to arrest you if you tell anyone. A non-trivial number of police officers will steal from your house or vehicle during a search. Folks, first of all, I've myself been the victim of 2 of these techniques. Okay? So I've had police hurt the nerves in my wrist by unlawfully placing me under arrest when I was doing nothing but handing out factual information, not solicitation, which I was then sent a letter of apology, okay, saying that they acted inappropriately and I had every right to do what I was doing and refuse to leave the area because they didn't want a lawsuit. These people should be lucky to live. Every person who witnessed this should have descended on them physically and tore them limb from limb. That's what would happen in a true free society when someone's rights are being usurped. Torn apart like a grizzly bear. And I was handcuffed with zip ties so tight that I didn't really get the true nerve feeling back in my hand for at least 6 months after the event. Almost permanent damage done to my right hand by these fucking trash cult members when I did nothing wrong except exercise freedom of speech and the press. And we don't think we're at a point where we need to go to war. And it's gotten infinitely worse since then. You know what that punk bitch cop did? Took my wallet out of my pants without my permission when I said I do not consent to any searches and stole the money from my wallet. You fucking bitch. You're a fucking bitch, punk. You're a fucking lowlife thief, punk. You're a trash fucking criminal punk bitch. When things break down, come and see me, boy. I'll fight you with my bare hands. And you'll see what'll happen to you, son. You're a lowlife punk criminal fucking bitch, boy. You're a common fucking thief. At that time, I was extremely poor and had hardly any resources to my name. The entirety of the money that I had at that point was one $20 bill in my wallet. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. I'm almost embarrassed to share that with my viewing audience. I was so destitute at the time that happened, trying to educate the people about what the Federal Reserve is and has done to their resources and savings, okay? That they had to work real hard for, and that the Federal Reserve has destituted that through what they call monetary policy. I'm printing factual information and handing out factual pamphlets about how people are being stolen from through a hidden tax called inflation. And I'm arrested. It wasn't an arrest, it was an illegal detainment. An illegal detainment. Okay? But if you're stopped, that's called being stopped from what you're doing. But it's an illegal detainment. It's an unlawful, illegal detainment that should have never occurred. And this scumbag punk bitch tries to cut the blood flow off to my hands so bad that I get nerve damage, and then unlawfully takes my wallet, which I told him I don't consent to a search because this is unlawful, and steals the only bill in my wallet to get my ID. Went in, stole from me. You're a rotten fucking skank thief, boy. And your parents fuck you up, little fucking boy. And you've done nothing to unfuck your mind or your morality. And anybody who thinks that this doesn't go on at a totally, completely institutional level that is completely espoused, you are a low-life, naive scumbag yourself who is endorsing theft, immorality, coercion, and slavery. And you're just as much of a piece of shit because you watch it happen and you say nothing and you do nothing. This goes on every day to completely innocent people who have done nothing wrong. If you believe in policing, you are a supporter and a condoner of slavery, you rotten piece of shit dirt. And I'm not mincing words. I'll say it even calmly to you. You're a rotten piece of fucking dirt. Your parents fucked you up morally, and you haven't done a thing to correct that fucked upness in your mentality. Because you don't give a shit about yourself enough to unfuck yourself. Now there it is with common street lingo, boy. Common street lingo, girl. I'll tell it to you right to your face like I would some other fucking thug criminal on the street. Because that's essentially what you are. That's real fucking talk. You ain't going to hear that anywhere but right here on What on Earth is Happening, because nobody else has the fucking balls to do it. So I'll do it. I'll do it for the whole damn totally diseased world. Let's continue and try to get through this. A non-trivial number of police officers commit intimate partner violence and use their status to get away with it. In other words, they rape and abuse their spouses, whether they be wives or husbands. A non-trivial number, and guess what, folks? We're learning about this through studies. It's over 40%. I would say that's really just what we're hearing about. Folks, if we're honest with ourselves, it's well over half of police officers are violent abusers and rapists of their spouses. That's why if you get involved in a relationship with these people, knowing what they already behave like, honestly, part of the blame has to go to you. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm saying part of the blame goes to the victim because they didn't listen and they got involved with people who are known psychopaths. So guess what? Get as fucking offended about that as you like. and say, oh, you're blaming the victim. No, I'm blaming the perpetrator first and foremost, but I'm saying the victim is actually involved in the perpetuation of it because people still want to go out and forge relationships with police. And if you do, you deserve what you get. Quite frankly, you deserve what you get because you can't claim ignorance. All this information is out there and has been out there for a number of years. Look at the studies on police spousal abuse. A non-trivial number of police officers use their position to entice, coerce, or force sexual favors from vulnerable people. If you take nothing else away from this essay, I want you to tattoo this on your brain forever. If a police officer is telling you something, it is probably a lie designed to gain your compliance. Because they're all dirty fucking liars. They're immoral people. They're thug criminals. They don't care about what's right. They don't care about what morality is. They'll tell you that from now. They'll tell you that they do from now till the end of time. And I'm here telling you this is exactly as it is, as you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. And it's an actual tiny minority that do have a conscience. And when they do develop a conscience, they see that this is what the institution props up. And they finally give in to their conscience, follow it, and quit. As this person did. How many people do you know who have done that? A tiny, paltry, piss in a pot few. That's why I say there is no great awakening happening. There's a false awakening happening, characterized by a ton of false awakening characteristics. A real, true awakening, police would understand that what they have been involved in is a satanic death cult, and they would follow their conscience instead of following orders, and they would quit their cult. Is that happening? No. Some people are realizing this is what the police are from a foundational, institutional basis, and they are starting to shame them because of it. Because it's getting so bad. Is that shaming police into quitting their job because they've suddenly come to an awakening of what real morality is? No, that's not why some police are walking off duty. They haven't become any more moral than they were. They're just as dirty, immoral pieces of dirt bag fucking trash as they ever were. Just like common street thugs. They are no different. They have not reached an awakening or an understanding of true objective morality at all. They're walking away because they egotistically feel disrespected by people who are starting to come online to the truth about what their institution is as a fucking death cult. And now their little boy, their little shit-diapered feelings are hurt. These people have lost respect for me. Anybody with a fucking brain never had any respect for you, punk-ass bitch boy. Never had 1 ounce of respect for somebody who never had an ounce of respect for yourself. Respect is a mirror. Respect is a mirror. You respect yourself, others will show respect to you. You have no self-respect because you're a dirty, immoral order follower. You're not following conscience because you don't want to do the hard work of learning what conscience is, which is the objective knowledge of the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior under natural law. You don't want to do that work. You want to stay in your indoctrinated fucking satanic cult mindset and just do what you're told, like a little piss in their diaper, shit in their diaper, no brain, shit for brains bitch. And just bring an active duty cop right in this room and I'll have that conversation right to your know-nothing face, boy. Bring him in. I'll bring him right in off the street and say that right to them, right to their face on camera. You think I'm afraid of you? I'm in the right. I stand in pure righteousness of natural law. And there is no greater protection. There is no other protection. I definitively know the difference between objective moral right and immoral wrong, and I live it through my behavior by an act of my will in the moment every single day. And that is the only protection. That's the only true ultimate protection. Then when it comes down to protection in the physical domain, then self-defense comes into play and firearms come into play. But let me tell you something. You want to talk about ultimate cosmic protection? You have none of it going for you because you stand in the wrong. I have all of it going for me because I stand in the light and in the right. That's why I'm not backing down and I'm not afraid of you. No fear. Stand in the right and mighty forces will come to your assistance. If everybody had that level of courage, we'd be free right now. Continuing. Do not talk to cops and never ever believe them. Do not, quote, try to be helpful with cops. Do not assume they are trying to catch someone else instead of you. Do not assume that what they are doing is, quote, important or even legal. Under no circumstances assume any police officer is acting in good faith. Also, and this is important, do not talk to cops. I just remembered something. Do not talk to cops. Checking my notes real quick, something just jumped out at me. Do not fucking talk to cops ever. Ever. Say, I don't answer questions, and if you are free to leave. If so, leave. If not, tell them you want your lawyer, and that, per the Supreme Court, they must terminate questioning. If they don't, file a complaint, collect some badges for your mantle. If I am ever confronted with a cop I do not understand, I wish to go on my way. That is it. I'm not talking to you. I don't understand anything you say. You are stopping me from going on my way, and I wish to go on my way. That is it. That's it. I don't understand anything you say. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand anything you say because it's all in legalese, nonsense, bullshit that has nothing to do with me as a natural human being. I stand in the right. I have harmed none. That's it. And I'm not even going to say that. I don't understand. You speak a different language. You speak satanic cult legalese. I speak veritas, the language called truth. That's it. So we have a language disconnect. I don't understand anything you say, ever have said, ever will say. And that's all I ever said to those cops who unlawfully detained me. I just repeated, I don't understand anything you say. I don't understand anything you say. I wish to go on my way. I don't understand anything you say. I said lots of other things too to the crowd, but to them I said, I don't understand anything you say. This is illegal, unlawful, and immoral, and I want to go on my way. That's it. Your behaviors are immoral, and I want to go on my way. And you know what, folks? Again, we're going to get into even deeper, harder material on this show in future podcasts. It's going to go way deeper and darker, folks, because I'm going to get into the right to kill. We have to go over things that were talked about in Duress, Dissidence, and Deadly Force and talk about the natural right to kill when your rights are being usurped. And this is a very hard concept for most people to understand, and it shouldn't be that hard to understand. The ultimate in spiritual awakening is simply the fact that sentient beings have the right to kill those who would thwart their rights as sentient beings. Let me say that again. And let me tell you something, folks. This is the end goal understanding of every occult esoteric school of thought that has ever existed in the history of humanity. It is ultimate awakening. Ultimate awakening. Maybe we'll name the show Ultimate Awakening, the right to kill. Every single sentient being that has ever lived has always and will eternally always possess the inherent natural right to kill any other being who would attempt to thwart their rights. It is an eternal truth. If you don't understand that, you are not awake. You have not studied natural law and or occult philosophies of the great mystery traditions of consciousness that have existed throughout human history in their fullness, in their entirety, at the level that you need to study them to understand what eternal truth of awakening and eternal truth of natural law is and always has been regarding the right to kill. Notice I did not use the word murder because murder and killing are two different things. And ladies and gentlemen, the kind of war that's going to involve that type of killing is coming, and it is not going to be able to be avoided. I have done, since day one, my total duty. My duty, and fulfilled my obligation and responsibility to attempt to avert that human eventuality in the physical domain of war. And I am telling you, we are on the rapid fast track for that to occur. Let's go back to the essay. Do the bastards ever help? Reading the above, you may be tempted to ask whether cops ever do anything good. And the answer is, sure, sometimes. And this is the difference between doing a good action or deed versus being a good person, capital G, capital P. A good being, a moral being. Let's call being a good person being a moral being. Capital M, capital B. A moral being. A moral human being. Capital M, capital H, capital B. Do you understand, thick-headed fucks out there? That's what I mean when I say a truly good person, a truly moral human being. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Your definition in your rotted brain is different than what I'm explaining the definition of a truly good moral human being is. Get your drooling, fucktarded definition that exists in your shit for brains head out in your liquid shit pool, float, sloshing around up here, folks. Get your internal definition out of the pool of liquid shit sloshing in here, okay? Understand what I mean by the definition of a truly good, moral human being. Because sometimes I really think I'm talking to an entire population of people with, Down syndrome. I really do. I really do. And it's sad. It's sad. It's really, really sad. We are not talking about the ability to perform one or two good tasks in your lifetime, or to be seen as good by your little daughter who you bounce on your knee at night while you're stripping everybody else of their natural rights as human beings during the daytime. That's not what we're talking about as being good. Capital G, good. Capitalize the word good. It doesn't mean what you think it is. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Your internal definition is skewed and fucked up. You think it means, can this person perform any good tasks ever in their lifetime? Can they be good to their daughter or their wife? Yeah, that's possible. And still go and be in a moral piece of trash the rest of the day. A good person doesn't engage in immoral activity. During the course of a day, they make an informed decision based on the knowledge of conscience. Is this behavior right or is it morally wrong? And if it's right, they can do it. And if it's wrong, they don't engage in it. That's what it means to be a truly good moral human being. So get your definitions right, numbskulls. And you got to say it this way to some people because you've been saying it for, I'm not going to bang on my desk. You've been saying it for 10 goddamn years. And then people still come through, haven't watched the fucking podcast and say, this person could be a good person. You're literally, do you have Down syndrome? Because please turn it off. I've been called an ableist because I say, actually, you're an insult to people with Down syndrome. A lot of them can get it, folks. I could explain this to literally a mentally retarded human being with Down syndrome who's unfortunately afflicted with that condition. And they'll get it before you in a lot of cases. They'll get the philosophy before you will. So maybe it's an unfair comparison. Maybe I should apologize. Maybe I have been an ableist. I've been called an ableist by people because I compare dumb people to people with total mental retardation, like Down syndrome. Maybe I've been an ableist, Maybe I have to reevaluate that. And maybe it will be easier to teach this to people with Down syndrome than to teach it to the people who have such a hardened fucking satanic ego that they're never going to get it. They're going to die in that condition. They're going to gleefully and gladly die in ignorance. Not because they're incapable of understanding it from a mental capacity level. They have the mental capacity to understand it. It's just their satanic ego is so fucking hard and they don't want to understand it. And they're going to die in that level of willful ignorance, truth, and morality be damned. You won't hear that from anyone else. I wish there were tons of people on video saying this every day. I wish I could say, hey, let me tag out of here and stand on the apron for a little while. Like my guilty pleasure of watching pro wrestling since I was a kid. That's my one dumb, guilty distraction so that I don't dwell on this continually. And then I'd be a really angry human being, as if I'm not already angry enough already because of the sheer willful ignorance. But to give the pro wrestling analogy, I've been in that ring getting beat from pillar to post, for the large part of the match. And finally, I see somebody on the apron I can tag out to and get a breather on the apron. If I saw that with tons and tons of people doing the great work, it would be a huge relief. And maybe I wouldn't be this bitter. Maybe, just maybe. I don't know. Maybe it would help. But guess what? You know what everybody says? You're doing fine in there, Mark. Who needs to tag in? Fuck you. You've been getting the shit literally beaten out of you, all this whole match. But I'm standing on the apron fresh as a daisy. Who needs to tag in? That's what you sound like. That's what you sound like. You sound like a tag team partner that has left the apron and gone back to the dressing room and said, fuck my partner. That's really a perfect analogy. So, let's go back to the reading. The answer is sure. Sometimes they could do some things that are good. In fact, most officers I've worked with thought they were usually helping the helpless and protecting the safety of innocent people. This is how, dumb shit for brains people they are. During my tenure in law enforcement, I protected women from domestic abusers, arrested cold-blooded murderers and child molesters, and comforted families who lost children to car accidents and other tragedies. I helped connect struggling people in my community with local resources for food, shelter, and counseling. I de-escalated situations that could have turned violent and talked a lot of people down from making the biggest mistake of their lives. I worked with plenty of officers who were individually kind, bought food for homeless residents, or otherwise showed care for their community. The question is this: did I need a gun and sweeping police powers to help the average person on the average night? The answer is no. When I was doing my best work as a cop, I was doing mediocre work as a therapist or a social worker. My good ideas were listening to people failed by the system and trying to unite them with any crumbs of resources the structure was currently denying them. It's also important to note that well over 90% of the calls for service I handled were reactive, showing up well after a crime had taken place. We talked about this last week, folks. Police officers cannot protect you. They do not protect you. They will not ever protect you. They show up after the fact, and then they attempt to go after people who committed some violent acts. That's it. They do not stop violent acts from occurring and never can, don't now, and never will. Never can they do that. That's why self-defense is your personal responsibility and in your hands if you don't want it. Tough shit, it's still your personal responsibility. We would arrive, take a statement, collect evidence, if any, file the report, and then on to the next caper. Most active crimes were were someone harmless possessing or selling a small amount, were someone who is harmless possessing or selling a small amount of drugs. Very, very rarely would we stop something dangerous in progress or stop something from happening entirely. That is like literally 1 in a billion, I would say. It is an extreme rarity when that ever occurs. I would say largely just like a Satori sudden awakening out of nowhere and a Kundalini experience bursting out the top of your head and suddenly you're an awake spiritual being. It happens with 1 in 100 billion people. If that. Don't count on it. It's not the rule. It's the unbelievable exception to the rule. If you count on it, you're a naive person. Awakening takes self-work. Knowledge and self-work. Very, very rarely will we stop something dangerous in progress or stop something from happening entirely. The closest we would usually get was seeing someone running away from the scene of a crime, but the damage was still done. That's it. They don't protect anybody. Consider this. My job as a police officer required me to be a marriage counselor, a mental health crisis professional, a conflict negotiator, a social worker, a child advocate, a traffic safety expert, a sexual assault specialist, and every once in a while, a public safety officer authorized to use force, all after only 1,000 hours of training at a police academy, which is a cult training facility. Does any person we send to catch a robber also need to be the person we send to interview a rape victim or document a fender bender? Should one profession be expected to do all that important community care with very little training all at the same time? To put this another way, I made double the salary that most social workers made to do a fraction of what they could do to mitigate the causes of crimes and desperation. Again, the real cause is what you learn when you're young. Do you learn morality when you're young, or do you not learn that from your parents and the rest of society? What we're teaching here on What on Earth is Happening since day one. Now, you're going to not get that moral education from schools, from the media, from any government institution, and certainly almost in every case, not from your fucking parents, because they didn't get it from their parents. I know I didn't get it from mine. Hey, I love my parents, but guess what? I didn't get that moral education from them. I got it from strangers who cared enough to put the great work out there to other people, for other people to learn. That's where I got it, and that's how I awakened. Didn't come from my parents or any of my fucking family, who most of which are still completely asleep. Some on the very, very brink of awakening, but not even halfway there. Not, talking out against it. It's great that they're starting to wake up, but you're late to the party. Let's just put it that way. People had this opportunity, 13 years ago, 14 years ago while I was doing this, to get this instruction directly from me. And back then they were saying, oh, where's your tinfoil hat? You're crazy. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Now, not so much. Now they're saying, hey, I think Mark's been right about this all along. Late to the party. Hey, I'll welcome you into the party anyway. Still understand you were late. Because of ego. Because of not being able to say the 3 big magic words. I was wrong. Certainly not being able to acknowledge to another of your kin, I was wrong and you were right. Most people will never do that. They'll die in ignorance before ever doing that. Continuing. Armed, indoctrinated, and dare I say traumatized cops do not make you safer. Community mutual aid networks who can unite other people with the resources they need to stay fed, clothed, and housed make you safer. I really want to hammer this home. Every cop in your neighborhood is damaged by their training, because they're members of a cult and they received cult indoctrination, not training. Every cop in your neighborhood is damaged by their training, emboldened by their immunity, and they have a gun and the ability to take your life with near impunity. This does not make you safer, even if you're white. I've been telling people this for years on end. Finally, someone with a little bit of courage coming forward and telling it from an insider's perspective. How do you solve a problem like a bastard? So what do we do about it? Even though I'm an expert on bastardism, I'm not a public policy expert nor an expert in organizing a post-police society. So before I give some suggestions, let me tell you what probably won't solve the problem of bastard cops. Increased bias training. This will not solve the problem. A quarterly or even monthly training session is not capable of covering over years of trauma-based camaraderie in police forces. I can tell you from experience, we don't take it seriously. The proctors let us cheat on whatever tests there are, and we all made fun of it later over coffee. Tougher lawyers won't solve the problem. I hope you understood by now cops do not follow the law and will not hold each other accountable to the law. Tougher laws are all the more reason to circle the wagons and protect your brothers and sisters. That's right, folks, because they're not the thin blue line. They're the satanic death cult. They're low-level members of the satanic death cult that rules over our entire human society. That's all you ever have been. Thin blue line, my ass. You're an ego-hardened, thick-headed, low-level, rank-and-file, shit for brains boy and girl of a satanic death cult that will throw you under the bus when they're done fucking using you like the fucking tool you are. Back to the slides. More community policing programs will not solve the problem. Yes, there is marginal effect when a few cops get to know the members of their community, but look at the protests of 2020. Many of the cops pepper spraying journalists were probably the nice school cop a month ago. Police officers do not protect and serve people. They protect and serve the status quo. And I would say they protect and serve the one big satanic cult that is running the world. They protect and serve the status quo, quote, polite society and private property. Using the incremental mechanisms of the status quo will never reform the police because the status quo relies on police violence to exist. Exactly. Therefore, if you believe it should continue to exist, you are a condoner of violence and slavery. Capitalism requires a permanent underclass to exploit for cheap labor, and it requires the cops to bring that underclass to heel. You're not talking about true capitalism. You're talking about crony capitalism here. You are talking about ultimately what amounts to statism, which all forms of statism are forms of socialism, and ultimately international socialism, which is communism. It could be called fascism. It could be called communism. The whole left versus right divide is just a bullshit divide and conquer strategy that is all about polarization dialectic. We've talked about it ad nauseum here on What on Earth is Happening. Okay? You know what it all is? It's all called feudalism. Doesn't matter what brand of feudalism, what flavor do you like? Do you like chocolate feudalism? Vanilla feudalism? Maybe you like the minarchist strawberry flavor of feudalism called libertarianism. You know, the Libertarian Party. If you don't like chocolate and vanilla that Big Daddy has prepared for you, we have the third flavor to complete the Neapolitan triad. And you could join the libertarian policy. I think I had it right the first time. Okay? You know, this is what people think is freedom. No, it's a euphemism for slavery. That's it. That's all it ever has been. Doesn't matter which side of slavery you come from, the right, the left, the middle, the minarchist, it's all slavery. Stop euphemizing it. And it's not capitalism. It is crony capitalism, which is actually a form of socialism. I'm not saying I'm a capitalist. I think that's just another form of control as well. But what he is lumping it together as is not true capitalism. Even that form of raw capitalism would eventually form a control system. Okay? It would be a harder one even to get out of mentally. That's why all forms of money that don't exist in nature and aren't true inherent value are forms of mind control. So don't paint me as a, anarcho-capitalist. I'm not. I'm a pure anarchist that understands there is only natural law and morality, whether you understand it and adhere to it in behavior or not. That's what true anarchy is. There's no such thing as hyphenated anarchy. I'm going to do a whole show on that, maybe a few. Okay? Instead of wasting time with minor tweaks, I recommend exploring the following ideas. No more qualified immunity. Police officers should be personally liable for all decisions they make in the line of duty. No more civil asset forfeiture. Did you know that every year citizens like you lose more cash and property to unaccountable civil asset forfeiture than to all burglaries combined? The police can steal your stuff without charging you with a crime, and it makes some police departments very rich. Breaking the power of police unions. Police unions make it nearly impossible to fire bad cops and incentivize protecting them. That's called the thin blue line. To protect the power of the union. A police union is not a labor union. Police officers are powerful state agents, not exploited workers. They are satanic death cult members, if we drop the euphemizing. Require malpractice insurance. Doctors must pay for insurance in case they botch a surgery, so police officers should do the same for botching a police raid or other use of force. If human decency won't motivate police to respect human life, perhaps hitting their wallet might. Defund, militarize, and disarm cops. Thousands of police departments own assault rifles, armored personnel carriers, and stuff you've seen in a war zone. Police officers have grants and huge budgets to spend on guns, ammo, body armor, and combat training. 99% of calls for service require no armed response, yet when all you have is a gun, every problem feels like target practice. Cities are not safer when unaccountable bullies have a monopoly on state violence and the equipment to execute that monopoly. One final idea. Consider abolishing the police. Hooray! Someone gets it. Abolish the satanic death cult at a lower level altogether, and then these satanic death cult members won't be able to be the rank and file order followers for the satanic death cult order givers. Then we're making some fucking progress, folks. I know what you're thinking. What? We need the police. Where's Vomit Man? They protect us. Yeah, this is the myth I've been trying to shatter for the last month. As someone who did it for nearly a decade, I need you to understand that by and large, police protection is marginal and incidental. It is an illusion created by decades of cop propaganda designed to fool you into thinking these brave men and women are holding back the barbarians at the gates. I alluded to this above. The vast majority of calls for service I handled were theft reports, burglary reports, domestic arguments that hadn't escalated into violence, loud parties, houseless, people loitering, which is houselessness. You know, we need to stop calling it homelessness. Call it what it is. They have no house. Traffic collisions, very minor drug possession, arguments between neighbors. Mostly the mundane ups and downs of life in the community with little inherent danger. And like I mentioned, the vast majority of crimes I responded to, even violent ones, had already happened. My unaccountable license to kill was irrelevant. What I mainly provided was an objective third party with the authority to document property damage, ask people to chill out or disperse, or counsel people not to beat each other up. A trained counselor or a conflict resolution specialist would be 10 times more effective than someone with a gun strapped to his hip, wondering if anyone would try to kill him when he showed up. There are many models for community safety that can be explored if we get away from the idea that the only way to be safe is to have a man with an M4 rifle prowling your neighborhood, ready at a moment's notice to write down your name and birthday after you've been robbed and beaten. You might be asking, what about armed robbers, the gangsters, the drug dealers, the serial killers? And yes, in the city I worked, I regularly broke up gang parties, found gang members carrying guns, and handled homicides. I've seen some tragic things, from a reformed gangster shot in the head with his brains oozing out to a 15-year-old boy taking his last breath in his screaming mother's arms thanks to a gang member's bullet. I know the wages of violence. This is where we have to have the courage to ask, why do people rob? Why do they join gangs? Why do they get addicted to drugs or sell them? It's not because they are inherently evil. I submit to you that these are the results of living in a capitalist system. Here's where you got it wrong. I'm sorry, man, but you got it wrong there. It's not because we live in a quote-unquote capitalist society. If you said crony capitalist society, you're correct there, partially. It is because we live in a society that has no true knowledge of objective morality according to natural law. It doesn't matter what kind of monetary system you set up, there are still people who are totally ignorant fools when it comes to what the actual objective difference between right and wrong actually are. If you would have said that, you would have gotten 100. I'm going to have to deduct like at least 10 to 20 points off your total score, unfortunately. Okay? But you're getting human nature isn't what we've been told. Okay? I submit to you that these are the results of, okay, so it says, yep. Why do they get it? I submit to you is their results of living in a capitalist system that grinds people down and denies them housing, medical care, human dignity, and a say in their government. This is what the satanic death cult does. Okay? You could look at capitalism as just one of, a crony capitalism is just one of the manifestations and methods of the death cult. These are the results of white supremacy pushing people to the margins. It has nothing to do with race, folks. It's about statism. It's about the belief in authority. Okay? That's what it is. It's not about race. You could say a lot of these people are racist, but it goes in any direction when it comes to race. It doesn't have to be white on black, black on white. It could be Hispanic on white, Hispanic on black, black on Hispanic, and on down the line of these perceived differences between human beings. The one difference we're not looking at and learning enough about is whether you're a moral human being or not. From a true, objective, moral perspective when it comes to natural law. These are the results of white supremacy pushing people to the margins, excluding them, disrespecting them, and treating their bodies as disposable. Equally important to remember, disabled and mentally ill people are frequently killed by police officers not trained to recognize and react to disabilities or mental health crises. Some of the people we picture as violent offenders are often people struggling with unrelated mental illness, often due to economic hardships. Very frequently, the officers sent out to, quote, protect the community, escalate this crisis, and ultimately wound or kill the person. Your community was not made safer by police violence. A sick member of your community was killed because it was cheaper than treating them. Are you extremely confident you'll never get sick one day too? And that won't happen to you? Are people that confident? Are they willing to take that risk? So we have a couple pages left in this document, folks, at least a few pages left. Okay? Got about 4 or 5 pages left. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we're going to have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening. Okay? I will back it up a tiny bit and maybe re-emphasize some of the things he goes over as potential solutions, or that he's saying, completely dissolve the police. Okay? We'll pick it up from there next week. That'll be part 4 of the psychological state of police and their supporters, and then we'll take your calls from the rest for the rest of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching What on Earth is Happening. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, as always, government is slavery, and so is every single form of policing that has ever upheld the satanic death cult of slavery. We'll see you right here next week.